pissing me off today. All right.
Yeah, I've been in a bad mood all week.
Yeah, dude, me too. Real bitch. Real bitch all week. To the point where like, I had to go back and look at some grades and be like, was I too much of a bitch? Like, was I just in a bad mood? I wasn't. I was actually really generous.
Yeah.
It was raining a lot too. Raining a lot here.
Doesn't rain here.
Yeah, I know.
Doesn't rain.
Oh
Although it did rain on election day here. But
yeah.
that was like a news story here because it like rained.
We got this like game from my husband and I play a series of games called the Rusty Lake games.
The fuck is that?
They're like escape games basically, but they're like via an app.
Oh.
And so you can do this like 2-player thing. And so we bought this game. And we get through the first chapter. We're like, fine, okay, we're done for the day. We're going to stop here. We'll pick up on chapter 2. They're usually like intended to be kind of creepy.
Yeah, man.
And we go to play it the next day. And it's just like stuck on like this part of chapter 1 that we already played. Neither of us can press anything. We have to reset it. And we're like, all right, we're just going to blow through this chapter. So already like everything's kind of boring. It kind of sucks because we've already played it. Like there's no scares in it for us. There's no mystery. And we're just like skipping steps and whatever. And we get to the next chapter and like I'm getting real frustrated. First of all, he's telling me he has to do this thing where he has to like tell me the times on like an analog clock basically. And it's like it says something like 9 o'clock for one of the hands and he's like, I don't know, like 7:30. And I'm like, dude, can you not are you having trouble with clocks? It's not a big deal. But yeah, we get to the end of this chapter and it's like, you're done. And we were like, oh, are you fucking kidding me? We each just paid like $4 or $5 to play like, you know, maybe a 2-hour game. I was like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
So that's what you get.
Have to write an email to the devs, to the devs department, dude.
Yeah.
Be like, so what's going on with your shitty software?
Like, this is a terrible. I mean, it's supposed to like have a story to it. It's like this is a terrible story. I mean, it's fine. It would be fine if it were like, I don't know, whatever. I was disappointed. I was just really, really disappointed.
Disappointment. Very familiar with the feeling.
But I'm also bad at being a team player, so it's probably for the best. Just bought the other book of hers that I wanted to read too.
Which one?
Wonderland.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to read that as well.
And I also bought The Lullaby by that French author. One about the nanny.
Yeah, that sounds good. Are you good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy.
Bored.
I may say that the male is entirely hostile. No!
Resources.
Life, friends, is boring. We must not say so.
So, this is Heavy Board. My name's Andrew Woodstadt.
And I'm bloated.
And today we're doing Baby Teeth by Zoje Stage.
I think it's Zoya.
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 Yeah. Stog. Zoya Stog.
Yeah, it's spelled like Zoe with a J in it. Z-O-J-E. Stage.
Yeah, and I guess we'll do the little. So this book came out in 2018, I believe, and this was her first book. And since then, like we talked about with like some of the other books she's put out, she's pretty much put out like a book a year since she got her break with this one, and which you like to see. I like to see. And this one was originally published in the U.S. by St. Martin's Griffin, right? So St. Martin's Publishing Group, yada yada. Hardcovers, yeah, we don't need to get into that. So St. Martin's Press, we have the same edition, 2018 edition. Oh, I guess the paperback was first in 2019.
Yeah, I have the hardcover.
Oh, you have the hardcover, okay. Paperback.
It
So
was
the page
cheaper.
numbers, yeah, page numbers should be the same. Shit. Okay. Housekeeping before we start. I'm really out of it here. Haven't had enough coffee this morning yet, or nicotine, or any of the other stimulants I do daily. We're working.
I've had some time.
Yeah.
Had some time to adjust.
We're still looking for workshop horror stories. If you have a workshop horror story, send that to heavyboardpodcast@gmail.com. For those that don't know, we also have a subscription plan. You can subscribe to at patreon.com/heavyboard. Receive full uncensored episodes for subscribers only. Bonus episodes. We have a couple cool bonus ones up there. You can check those out. If you can't afford that, don't want to, you can support us in other ways. You can check out and subscribe to our YouTube channels for more. Like, share, subscribe on any platform where you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple. That helps us out. So there are plenty of ways you can support us. Please support us if you like this. And that's it. That's it for housekeeping.
Deliciously creepy.
Yeah, I did see that this one was published under a couple titles. I don't know if it was...
Is it?
I saw like one version was called Bad Apple. I don't know if that was like a different version, but it was the same book.
Oh, okay. Just
where,
different language?
I don't even know, but it was just called like Bad Apple.
Because I think like one of the books that I just bought, not by the same author, but one of the authors that we have on our list, I think her name is Leila Slimani, the French author, and I think her book came out in French as The Nanny, but is out in English as The Lullaby.
Huh.
So it just might be translated, or
That's
is
what
it
I figured.
originally? Because this is originally in English, isn't it?
I think so. I think she's American. Like I think she's like of Swedish descent or whatever, but I think she's like American and
I mean, she lives in Pittsburgh.
right, yeah. But I think like her parents might be immigrants or something.
Oh
so.
yeah, I mean, God, Zoya. I hope there's something, you know.
At least one of her parents, yeah, something
Be a
like
cool
that.
name, you know. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was like a translation.
Yeah, I saw that, and then that's what I saw. Like when I looked it up, I was like, yeah, it looks like she's put out since she got her break with, you know, we talk about this on this podcast all the time. Sophie and I are in that position, literally struggling to get that little fucking break that everybody needs to get in there. I'm sure she was struggling, you know, to get this book out there and finally got it out
and
there.
we should also say like fiction is like, you know, probably a sort of a different struggle than poetry, right? They're both hard, but different.
Fiction, you just get more reward once you break through there on that side. But and so she's put out about a book. It looks like almost about a book a year since she's done this, which I applaud. I say good for Zoje. Like, yeah, it's good
On
that
books
this
that
book,
are doing really well.
Yeah, and it's good. I want to talk about this as we get into it here. Well, fuck it, we'll talk about it now. Where it's like this thing overall, like, you know, it's a pop book. It's kind of a pop book, but it has literary ambitions. Like it's well written.
100%.
Yeah, and it doesn't have kind of superfluous or corny little stuff that you would see in a lot of pop fiction like this. So I'm glad she's doing well, and I'm glad that her books, like she's popping them out and she's just elevating that pop book, like elevate it, you know, make it better.
And I wouldn't say, you know, when we've talked about this, I'm sure we'll talk about it more today, but you know, when we say sort of aspires to the literary, and maybe it like, you know, maybe we're being assholes for saying that and she's like, fuck the literary. I don't fucking know, but
I don't think so.
yeah, but
I
either
think it's
way,
clear. Yeah.
regardless, I think you know, it's not like, oh, it's the language is like beautiful or
Right.
like super figurative or anything like that. Like that's
Right.
not necessarily what we mean, though that can be part of it. But it could just be like in terms of themes and
I think just
you
in
know,
terms
just
of
other
writing,
literary
yeah.
devices. Yeah, it's really well written.
And even if she wasn't aspiring to that, it's just better written than most pop stuff like that I pick up. Like even the big, like
Yeah.
I just read a Dean Koontz novel. I'd never read him before. And, you know, the writing's not good. Like it's not good. This one is actually like there's an attempt to elevate the writing. It's not just, you know, shitting out a story.
yeah,
So I do appreciate that. But I guess like initial thoughts, we're already talking about
I think
it. But
I would say from what I've read of Stephen King, I think her writing is tighter than Stephen King.
yeah, it is. It's tighter. Stephen King, we talk about this all the time, is because like Stephen King gets shit on in literary circles, but obviously in other circles he's huge and one of the
Yeah, well,
most
he also
famous
has
authors
like
in the
that kind
world.
of raw thing, you know, that
Yeah.
people like, and that's not the same.
There's like
thing.
there's like corniness, there's like little bits,
Yeah.
and he has that kind of thrill. I always say this, and we talked about this on our Stephen King episode. Listeners, you can go back and listen. Where he's a story guy. Like his is all about the story, and I don't mean the writing. I don't mean like all the other stuff. It's just like the thrill, kind of suspense story. Like he's one of the best at that. Even if the writing style isn't that good and things like that, but like the story just pulls you through. Like he just has this way about pulling you through these kind of exciting little pop thrillers. With like we said on that King episode, listeners, like occasionally they'll be like, wow, that's a little beautiful sentence right there, you know, like he's still like there's still that aspiration. But this is a reoccurring theme on this podcast, listeners. Those that listen will know, right? Like we always are curious, fascinated, and you know, the ever-changing kind of aspect, what separates pop and literary, why is there that divide? You know, we don't have to get into that today, but reoccurring a theme on this podcast. Because we love books. We love all books. We don't, we'll read whatever. But yeah, we're still talking. Initial thoughts. What did you think?
Thought it was great. I thought it was a page turner. There are things about it that I thought were kind of silly. Really, really minor things. I'm sure I will spend a lot of time making it sound like it's something like egregious and made me want to put it down, but it didn't. I really had fun. I instantly bought her second book as soon as I finished this one. It was a fun little psychological thriller. And I am especially skeptical of books that use a child point of view. I tend to have a rough time connecting with that.
Same, yeah.
But when it's done well, it's done well. You know, like, I mean, I say that, but then every so often you read a book that's in a child's perspective. And again, when we say child's perspective, it's like, that's pretty loose, right? Because it's not written in a way that you would think like a child really thinks this way and thinks in these words. It's just sort of, it, you know, indicates that this is like how a child thinks, right? It uses some of the words, but definitely, you know, there's an adult behind it and we know that. But it also makes it much more engaging for us as adult readers.
Yeah, there were a few things, and we've talked about this on every time we've done a more poppy kind of book, or, you know, a bestseller style book. Literary books rarely get to that level. There's a little inconsistency in the child POV. We talked about with King how good he is at doing the child POV and making you feel like it's a child's rationalizations. There are parts where I think it's done really well in this, and there are parts where it's a little like, you know, it sounds like a 16, 17-year-old like kind of thing. But yeah, you know.
I mean, or it sounds like a straight up adult. Yeah,
but
just like, so I would agree with that. I think that, you know, I do think Stephen King is kind of a master of this, but I thought it was done pretty well here for the most part.
Yeah, it was. But yeah, just a little. And, you know, because it's more of a pop bestseller type book, you can forgive that a little bit because the story starts to move. Like we talked about this on our King episode, we talked about this on the Twilight episodes. Listeners, you can go back and listen to those. And we have many more kind of these pop bestseller styles that we plan to get to eventually. But and listeners, if there's anything you want us to check out, please put it in the comments, send us an email. We love hearing from you, and we love taking our listeners' suggestions for books to read, things like that. So let us know. But yeah, overall, yeah, I liked it. I read it pretty quickly. Little moments, like a little lackluster in certain moments. I expected it to, maybe because it was like the marketing was so hyped up. Like I was like, oh, it's disturbing. Like this is a disturbing book. And then I read it. I was like, well, it's not as disturbing as some shit I've read. Like, but
and thriller that comes with some weight too. I mean, kind of loosely though. Like I feel like we sort of will call anything that is horror but not gory a thriller.
And it's one of the biggest seller markets. So if you're not writing romance and you're not writing thrillers and you're not writing horror, like you're not getting published. I guess sci-fi throw that in there too, but sci-fi kind of overlaps with the thriller horror thing. But
yeah, there were things I wanted more of in that regard, but
it does, and this is where I get into like the literary aspirations, is that it does have a little more literary aspiration where you aren't expected to have these big kind of gory scenes, these kind of what you would see in pop novels. So I think this does straddle a line pretty well, I think, and I was impressed with how well it straddled the line. So like I said already, I mean, good for Zoje, good that she's getting this recognition, good that she's elevating the pop genre a little bit. Like, I mean, yeah, keep doing it. Like,
yeah, I wanted some really fucked up shit to go down.
Yeah, I was because that's what the marketing hyped it up as.
I mean, because that's what I like.
I
just wanted it to get very fucked up.
And you see this all the time.
Not that it wasn't fucked up.
Yeah, it still was, yeah.
But you
see this all the
if
time.
the whole premise of this book is that there's this like little kid who won't speak, who wants to kill her mother, basically. Like that's the whole thing. Like,
yeah. On my copy, there's like an Entertainment Weekly quote at the top. It says, "We need to talk about Kevin meets Gone Girl meets The Omen." And yeah, it's pretty much like that. And that's kind of how you pitch books and movies, scripts, whatever you're doing, listeners, right? Some of you may know this, some of you may not. You have to sell it, right? So if you're pitching to an agent, you're pitching to a publisher, an editor, like you have to be like, oh, it's like this, but like crossed with this, like kind of give them things that they already have in their mind so they can kind of see it before they read it, kind of thing, like what you're going for. So a little bit of that. But yeah, it is kind of a blend of those things.
Yeah.
I did watch The Omen after reading this.
Oh, wow.
Rewatched it because I'd seen it before, but not for years.
Yeah, I haven't watched it in years.
But you know the idea, yeah.
The one that came out when we were like teenagers, right?
There's the 2008 remake with Julia Stiles, and but I watched the original 76.
Yeah, you fucking would.
Yeah, and I mean I've seen both, but I'll probably go back and rewatch the 2008 now and just see, because there's like 5 sequels, so I want to go watch all those now too. But I also started reading We Need to Talk About Kevin after reading this, because like I'd had it, like a friend gave it to me or something, and I'm like, that was a big book. I like Lionel Shriver, like I just never got around to reading to it. Never saw
I hear
the
it's
movie.
one of the most supremely fucked up books.
It's good so far, yeah.
In terms of that sort of thriller element, which is like really what we're asking for. It's what we're asking for in this genre. Typically, is for some fucked up shit to happen. So it's not.
I've been thinking about that more and more recently too, dude. Like this kind of like there's something about books where you can get away with this kind of stuff, because really disturbing stuff that's hard to watch visually. So like when you're seeing like really like gory shit on horror movies or something, everybody freaks out about that. And like there's other things like, but like in a novel, like when you're reading it, there's like a level of removal in like the words on the page as opposed to a visual playing out in front of you or a real life thing.
But there's also the added opportunity to have more depth of perspective.
Yeah,
like,
well, I just mean it's a good place to put disturbing things.
The interior, like it helps us that we have Hannah's interior monologue, or she would appear as more of a villain to us.
Yeah.
I mean, she still is, but like, because like I feel like this wouldn't translate as well like into a movie.
Yeah, although I'm
Right.
sure it'll be a movie eventually.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure it's been optioned or something. But
But imagine how much of this book is like Hannah's internal monologue, because like
Right.
one of our main characters is a child who refuses to speak, and it's not that she can't speak, it's that it seems it's
and I
that
just
she elects not to.
I just mean it's a good place to put disturbing stuff. It's even better to put disturbing stuff in books than it is visually, because a lot of times visually seeing it play out visually or like is more disturbing than reading it in the book, kind of thing. So throughout history we've put the most disturbing, disgusting, horrific stuff in novels first, usually. And then when they get turned into movies or they get optioned into movies or something, they usually cut out some of the more horrific shit.
Yeah, because you can write horrific things.
Right, exactly. So it's like this it's the place for all of that. And Sophie mentioned this about the dialogue. Like, there isn't a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of internal monologue and things and thought processes and psyches of the characters. Really just Suzette and Hannah, the mother and the daughter. But that, I think, is what makes it lean into the literary side. Whereas, like, there's not a lot of dialogue. Like, there's dialogue, but not a whole lot. It's mostly the internal world. And that's good. Like, I like it. I like that it blended those. Really, it's just an obsession I have, like fascination I have about how writers do this well, and that's why it's a reoccurring theme on this podcast. All right, where do you want to start on this?
I mean, I'll let you decide. I don't have any notes until like chapters 6 and 7.
Yeah, the first couple things, they just kind of set the scene. So we get a few flashbacks. We get a few, like, I guess we start out with Suzette, do we? No, we start out with Hannah.
Yeah.
And then we get Suzette. We get a few chapters of Hannah. The one thing I noticed right away is, like, the kind of, when Hannah punches that kid in the grocery store.
Oh, yeah.
That's like the first kind of scene we see of Hannah really misbehaving. She punches like a baby, basically, in the grocery store line. And, it's like a huge thing, like, oh my God. And it's a good kind of character development thing. So you kind of see what's happening here. Is like, this child is much more aggressive than most children. This child is much more violent than most children. Although then you see also the kind of flaw of Suzette, the mother rewards the behavior. That drove me a little bit crazy, but I get that it's like character development. Like, we have to see that kind of weakness in the mother, where it's like, your child's misbehaving, and they went to the store originally and be like, oh, you can get a treat because you've been a good girl. Then she punches this baby, and then she still lets her have the treat, like, after she punches this baby.
Because she's getting a treat because she was such a good girl at the doctor who they took her to because, like, she doesn't talk.
Right. And I was just like, okay, well, that's the first problem there. You're rewarding bad behavior. Like, you can't be rewarding bad behavior. But, whatever. It's a story. It's for character development. But, yeah.
Yeah, and we get some indication here, too, that, like, okay, there's, nothing obviously wrong with Hannah. Like, according to doctors, they've seen several, blah, blah, blah. Like, and they're starting to get the idea that maybe there's something psychological going on. They refer her to a psychologist.
And Hannah's supposed to be 7. The little girl's 7 at this point, which is a good age for, like, a creepiness factor. I think the Omen kid is supposed to be like 5, 6 in the first movie. Yeah. I like story and stuff. So that's a good age to kind of, you start to see this kind of behavior in kids, kind of creepiness factor. Yeah. So 7, 8-year-olds doing that shit.
Okay, my first notes are actually about the first time Hannah speaks, but also there's...
But like the Crohn's, you would hit the Crohn's disease?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that we should hit here. So first, we have...
We'll just like, we get the idea that, like, the mother has Crohn's disease. Those that don't know who Crohn's disease is, a terrible disease, gastrointestinal chronic illness where you're constantly having diarrhea. I'm not entirely sure what causes it or why. I don't know enough. I'm sure you could look it up if you wanted to. But anyway, just know that she has this terrible intestinal disease. She has to take all these medicines. She's suffered with it her whole life. And I thought it was a good choice to immediately create sympathy for Suzette, the mother character. So she's dealing with not just, the trials and tribulations of motherhood and like living life on top of being a mother, but also this chronic disease that she suffered with since she was a teenager and has had all these surgeries
and insecurities around, and like apparently also like had a distant and troubling relationship with her mother. Like that is established pretty early, where her mom was like not interested in her, tummy problems.
She said her mom had the same issue, but like untreated, undiagnosed type thing.
And then we also get a lot of like, this is also when like I started to learn what a fistula is. Fascinating. Spent a lot of time reading about fistulas.
What did you discover?
That it's basically a tunnel from organ to organ.
Right.
Basically, from an organ to typically to the skin, from what I understand. Again, I got all of this from Wikipedia, and I'm only saying what I remember, which could be completely incorrect.
Yeah. Well, we're always
But she
incorrect,
describes
dude,
like just pus and shit. Like
yeah.
Basically like having a tunnel from like, I guess, your colon to your skin. And that like she had some surgery, so they had to like open it so that it could drain, so it could close up naturally.
Yeah.
And so like she had to have her mom like constantly changing it, and she talks about how like this, was like a point of insecurity for her, like because she was so worried about like, I mean, she basically had shit coming out of her stomach. Like why would you not be worried about that?
And from what I know about Crohn's,
loved it. Loved this element of the book.
And from what I know about Crohn's, depending on how severely you have it, there are things you can do. So there's like, okay, if medicines aren't working, the most extreme thing is they remove large part of the colon and the small intestine, and the large intestine, so that you do have to use a colostomy bag, the rest of your life, basically. But there are other operations that they try, and that's like last resort. They do not want to remove organs if they don't have to, type thing. So it'll be like there'll be operations you can do where they remove part of it that's like really affected, but not enough to where you'd have to use a colostomy bag the rest of your life to shit. So it's like, okay, usually doctors are going to try and do that first. So she's had and it's more painful to do that. It's a lot of suffering. Like she talks about years of having to clean and repack this open wound in her body as they like examine it and make sure it's okay before it heals up. And they make it clear that she's had 2 operations of this sort in her stomach with the intestines. Once when she was younger, and then once, I guess, right after she had the child. Yeah, after she had the kid. And that does complicate things in Crohn's. When you're a woman and you're giving birth and you're pregnant, Crohn's complicates all that, right? Of course it does. But so of course she's like, oh, this child, she never even knew if she was capable of having children because of the Crohn's, and now she has this child that she adores, or so ideally, right? You want to have a child, and maybe that it kind of gives us sympathy for Suzette, but then also kind of explains why Suzette kind of lets this bad behavior get away, because she's just so happy to have a child, kind of thing. But then also she's not. Like she also is like, there's like this weird, it's not even weird, it's like it's a normal thing, which I want to get to eventually, with how they show like Suzette basically like hating her child.
Yeah, and like thinking about her husband's body all the time.
Which is like how they show Suzette resenting the child to some extent. Where did I mark it? Page 85. It's when they send Hannah to the first school, and we learn that they've been sending Hannah to schools all the time, and she keeps getting kicked out, but like they keep trying to find new ones because they're concerned parents. The last sentence on page 85 in my version says, Suzette thought of the prize looming ahead of her: time, rest, peace, the return of her sanity. So like there is this level of like resenting the work that a child makes you do, like especially if the child's making it more difficult than like the average kid would.
Well, right, because she's also the mom who's staying at home to take care of Hannah. She's the one who is homeschooling Hannah, right?
Because she keeps getting kicked out of all these schools.
'Cause-
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
And at one point, she's like homeschooling Hannah, and Hannah is like, oh, where is it? Before that, really early on, like one of the first chapters, she's homeschooling Hannah, and Suzette's trying to teach her something. She's trying to get her to write something, and instead she writes like bitch, hate. And at some point she writes fuck mommy, she is weak and stupid. Like, damn.
Little
So the
7-year-old.
7-year-old who won't speak but can write like an adult,
Yeah. Fuck you. When I was in second grade, I got in trouble for saying fuck in school. Very
What
traumatic.
was your punishment?
Very traumatic memory. Well, it was like one of those things where like people were like, I remember it very vividly. I was second grade. I was sitting in the classroom, and it was kind of during like the break time thing where you could kind of socialize and like they give you little snacks and shit. And I remember we were talking about it because we were right at that age, like 6, 7, you know, where you're kind of like, oh, dirty words, kind of, and like everybody was like, oh, these bad words, and nobody had the balls to like say it or spell it. But, you know, me, of course, my personality, I was like, oh, it's easy. And I just started spelling it out like F, you, like kind of thing. And then like, as soon as I did it, I remember this one little girl, dude, she was like, oh, and then like ran away and told the teacher. And I was just like, you bitch.
Oh,
like,
bitch.
yeah, I was just like, what? Like,
Bitch, dude.
so then I got in trouble. I had to go to the principal's
fucking
office.
narc.
Yeah. Exactly, dude. And it was in like the context of us all like kind of giggling about it. I was like, oh, you just ruined it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that one affected me a little bit. But I was fascinated by how this kind of really takes the normal mother-daughter relationship, which is, you can vouch for this if you correct me if I'm wrong, usually a little hostile between
I can't speak
mothers
for
and,
usually, man.
yeah. But I just mean like, since I don't have that relationship, but like, yeah, specifically the mother-daughter relationship, it kind of takes that to the extreme. Like it really, and it, like, you know, it's a good plot device, but it takes that like kind of natural rift between mothers and daughters that like happens eventually.
Well, it definitely takes like, it definitely like takes the idea of the Electra complex and runs with it.
What's that? I don't know what that is.
It's the opposite of the Oedipal complex. So it's like a daughter that wants to kill her mother and marry her father. The Oedipal complex is what Oedipus does, is kills his father and marries his mother.
Freud. Getting some Freud in there. Is that true?
The Electra complex?
I mean, you know,
I mean, is it true? I don't
metaphor. Yeah, they're metaphors. You know,
like I don't know, like just how true that ever was.
I guess it's more metaphorically. They're trying to make the point in like a psychological framework.
Yeah.
What would cause somebody
I
to
don't
do
think
this
it's
stuff.
like literally like men desire.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
But then there's like, oh, you know, you become your parents eventually. You marry your parents eventually.
Yeah,
like, you know,
I think
kind
it's
of
more like
thing. Yeah. Whereas like it's not a conscious thing you're thinking, but like maybe just the brain does it, or at least, and it's only a theory, right? It's only a theory. You can't. But yeah, I was just fascinated by this mother-daughter relationship to the extreme, like this kind of resentment between the two.
Yeah, and like there is clearly like Hannah hates her mother, and Suzette, not Hannah's biggest fan, but is still on her side, right? Like she just wants shit to work out. They do the thing, this author does a thing where like sometimes like, you know, one moment will bleed right into the next speaker, right? So you'll go from one chapter where you have Suzette speaking, where we're like in the middle of something happening, and then we'll switch to see the same thing happening from Hannah's perspective, like mid-event. And I enjoyed that. I thought it worked really well. There's this moment, I guess maybe toward the end of, is it the end of chapter 6 maybe? And there aren't chapter numbers. I also intermittently listened to the audiobook and it had chapter numbers, so I had to like go back and figure out what was what. But there's a part where Hannah speaks, right? And this is like the first really big deal thing, I think, that happens in the book. Or it was the first like big noteworthy thing where we see that Hannah is like trying shit and is very like manipulative.
When she speaks in the French,
Yeah, when she speaks in a French accent and she like rolls her eyes back in her head and pretends to be possessed. So and I think it might be like in that same chapter. It's got to be, let's see. It's got to be shortly.
Marie Anne.
Yeah, Marie Anne. So she reads when her mom is like homeschooling her. She reads about this woman who was burned as a witch. She was like the last woman who was burned as a witch. What, in like the Salem witch trials or some shit? Or just generally, like,
not in Salem, but in France. She was technically the last woman burned
oh,
alive
that's
at the
what it was.
stake
Yeah.
in France during the time when they were burning witches, women, accusing them of being witches.
Burning witches.
They were just like burning them because, you know, just like in Salem, there's like the accusations running rampant for, I mean, come on, we all know this is like, oh, how could that have happened in Salem? It's like, yeah, have you been on social media, dude? Like mob justice is always like a fervor that like just runs through like the population. So any type of like somebody can just say that you were a witch, or somebody can say that you did something, that you said something, and now, you know, the mob comes for you. It's more of a metaphorical burning at the stake on social media, but pretty much the same thing, right? Just we like to think we're above that now, but you know, we're still human beings.
Oh, yeah. It's page 38.
Okay. So pretty early on,
Yeah.
when she says, "Because I'm not Hannah."
Yeah. The girl stood there, arms loosely at her sides, considering her mother. Then her eyes rolled back until they were solid white, dead nothingness in the sockets. "Because I'm not Hannah," the girl whispered. And that was in response to the question, "For fuck's sake, Hannah, why don't you ever listen to me?"
Right, because Suzette is so flustered, right? Like this, and that's why I'm like, yeah, there is this. It's, you know, everybody talks about this. I was just fascinated by the theme. Maybe I'm just going too far into the theme of the mother-daughter thing, you know.
Well, I mean, I think that's like so much of it is like,
Yeah.
I mean, the themes around motherhood are off the charts in this one.
But it touches something very specific about motherhood, and it's something that I think the reason people love Sylvia Plath and all the stuff that is because there's this little bit of resentment, like this little bit of like, I sacrificed my body,
Yeah.
my life.
Well, not just my body,
for
yeah,
you.
literally,
Like, yeah.
like my a lot of the next 18 years.
Yeah, and
ostensibly.
really not even 18 years, because it's not like it just stops. Like, you're always the parent, so like you're always the mother, and like, so like it's like a light, like you're literally, there's this
right,
little
but it's
bit,
your job.
right,
for
and it's
18
not,
years.
you know, not like it's like malicious or evil or, you know, whatever people want to ascribe to it, but it's like this little tiny thing that like just a little bit like that's in every mother-daughter, maybe even mother-son type stuff, where there's this little bit of like resentment that I think this book captures very well. And, you know, obviously it takes it to the extreme, as I said, like it takes it to an extreme version of that.
Sure.
But there's just, I'm just fascinated by that theme and how well it worked in this kind of very kind of, I don't know, like, I mean, I'm struggling to even say what it is, because again, I'm not a fucking woman, so I don't know the intricacies of that, but
Well, yeah.
I see it. I see it in the people that I do know, like
Yeah.
the mother-daughter relationships that I'm aware of, know of.
And well, like, and it's worse too because like they're playing on the daughter playing two sides idea, right? Where you have the kid who is one way in front of one parent and another way in front of the other parent, right, to get their way. And
The
Hannah is,
manipulation.
yeah. And so we already see, like, Suzette's starting to, like, lose her shit because she's like, Alex, the husband, doesn't see the side of Hannah. Like, she's his perfect angel. What if he thinks I'm going crazy? What if I'm just like this? What if I just appear to be like an awful mother who's just complaining about their child because he can't see what I go through every day?
That and the I think that's a good theme too. The kind of it's not a lot, right, listeners? Like, I'm not saying, oh, these people are resentful, but there's a little tiny sliver of resentment towards the father or the husband, kind of thing, where it's like, well,
Right.
you didn't have to go through this, you didn't have to like almost die giving birth, like, kind of thing, and you don't have to deal with all the mothering that is
All the child care.
Yeah.
He does do all the work stuff, but he doesn't get the more difficult moments of the relationship.
Right.
And so she has some resentment toward that. But other than that, they have like a really loving relationship, it seems. Like there isn't animosity there.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask about that Alex, the husband character, because he's one we don't ever get his perspective.
Yeah,
in
I
the
think we
novel.
start to get a glimpse of it toward the end.
Yeah. But it's through Suzette usually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what do we think of that? Like the husband character?
I think it was played well here. Not too much of it. Nothing that makes him seem like a bad guy. Just maybe a little bit oblivious, but nothing that actually like makes him seem like he's doing something wrong by not seeing what's happening, right? He's just not seeing it and they're not communicating effectively about it. But other than that, he's just like kind of a charming character.
Yeah.
With no real, like, I don't get the sense of anything really negative about him.
There's nothing
and that,
negative about him.
Yeah, there's
the entire
nothing,
novel.
which is strange, but didn't bother me.
I think it helps to show that how the guilt that Suzette feels, like she starts to feel like she's being irrational because Alex, the husband, isn't seeing these things. Like she's like, am I the one that's like has
Yeah.
the issue? Like
Because he's like the perfect man. And she's
Yeah.
like, he's not traditionally attractive, but she's clearly very attracted to him and is described as being very attractive to her throughout the novel. So, like, we like him. She at no point is, like, angry with him.
yeah.
She just wants him, like, on her side and is trying to figure out the best tactic to make that happen, which sounds more manipulative than I think it actually was. But of course she has to sort of do some shit, like she has to get Alex to like come to therapy with, her and the kid, which isn't like something she has to try too hard to make happen. But you can tell, like, in every moment where Hannah does something and Suzette's like, will he believe me? Like, oh, he has to believe me this time. It's like she's like panicked about it. Like it's a source of constant panic throughout the novel.
Right.
Not just will she hurt me? It's, what's he going to say? Is he going to believe me?
And there's almost that level of guilt in terms of feeling like she's more needy in like the marriage and like feeling guilty about that with the Crohn's, with all the other shit she has to deal with, like feeling like he's caretaking or something of her and the child. And there's like this little level of like, you don't have to deal with this, like, but I do, even if it's like a self, like,
Yeah, and there are even like other elements of that, of like feeling like, she needs to keep herself beautiful, and she had done a really good job of like trying to keep herself beautiful for her husband, and we can get into some of that stuff.
Yeah,
too,
which
but-
is right? Like it's a very real thing that people have to deal with as they age.
or like I think it's a real thing that some women might like fear, right?
I just mean the effort you have
Yeah.
to make, particularly as a woman, as you age, right? And you could say it's cultural.
Well,
or
it doesn't even have to
societal,
be the
but-
effort you have to make, but the effort that you feel like you have to make, or
Right.
the effort that like or like the worry that you aren't making an effort, you know. I don't think it's necessarily about like how much of an effort you make so much as like the feeling behind it, what motivates it. You know, a fear of not being beautiful to the person that married you.
Because people, like, nobody wants to be ugly. Like,
Yeah,
nobody
no one
wants to be ugly. Like, that's true for everybody, but it is a little it's different. It's a little different for women, like, kind of thing.
It's pretty different for women.
Right. And it's, unfair. Yeah, sure, it's unfair. Like, all that. Yeah, like, all that kind of stuff.
Like, we don't talk about old men as being, like, just butt ugly.
Right.
But
Although a lot
old
of
women,
them are.
yeah, I mean, plenty of them are. But, like, old women are, like, haggard, you know?
Yeah. And yeah, we don't want to get into like a whole cultural, like, oh, well, why is that like, culturally, blah, blah. But yeah. Yeah,
I mean, men become more distinguished as they age, and women, you know, their tits fall down.
Well, usually it depends. Like, that's like the thing, right? Like, that's like the thing. The men become more distinguished.
Yeah,
as
I
they
know.
age.
We
But
say
if you look
that,
around,
but I've looked around, man.
yeah, most men as they age do not become better looking, but the rich ones do. The celebrities do. The ones that were already attractive at like
People
when they
who
were
are
younger.
already like decently attractive maybe weren't like the, you know, and that's also a thing. Like, you don't know how you're gonna turn out until you're like, I don't know, like 20.
Yeah. Because I always see that too. It's like, oh, the men just get more beautiful. I was like, you look around like any public place, dude. Just go to a mall, go to some place, and you'll see a lot of ugly ass old guy. Okay, like fat as shit, like limping around casino. I see it all the time where I live, like limping around casino floors. And they're like 50 years old, and they like can barely walk with their
but
knees,
when
and, like,
a man is older and he still looks decent, you're not shocked. When a woman is older and she looks good, you're like, oh, she looks good. You know?
Yeah, it looks.
That's like,
shocking. That's true. He said that. Yeah, you'll see it. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Absolutely. And that plays into it, right? So that's like a normal thing that most people are dealing with. But then, like, as in this book, it takes it to a little bit more of extreme. Like, a lot of it is like, and I think it's because maybe that sets up, like, a lot of the stuff that Hannah does to Suzette, the mother, is things that she's trying to take away her beauty. She cuts her hair when she's sleeping, right?
Oh, yeah.
She's trying to make her not beautiful for her
Well,
daddy.
and why is that?
Yeah.
So there's a fun little scene where Hannah, I guess, is like listening in or watching, like peeking in on her parents having sex. And she like doesn't understand it.
Right, because she's 7. But watches the convulsions of the bodies, the sounds that they're making, mommy, you know.
And takes it to be some kind of love language. She refers to it. Oh, she hears them having sex and refers to it as a language more interesting than words. Remember, this is a child who does not speak, obviously has some understanding of language, has an inner monologue, like obviously can speak because she speaks directly to her mother, and she becomes shocked and she's like, what the fuck is going on? She takes, but yes, so she hears them having sex. She's like trying to see what she calls daddy's man parts, but she doesn't quite get a glimpse. So there's like this whole weirdness around sex, you know, and she's like a kid, so she's like trying to figure it out. She doesn't understand it. So
and
like,
there
whatever,
is that curiosity as
know.
a child. Yeah, like when you're a child and you don't know and you're curious, like that's all. It's just,
yeah. And this is when like Hannah's really beginning to think of ways to make mommy go away, and she's like pretending to be like possessed by this witch and she takes this, like, her reading about this woman as evidence that witches do exist. She mentions earlier, like, she's suggests that she like wants to marry her dad a little bit before this. She wants to keep her baby teeth also. I don't remember what context that's set in, but it's definitely where the title comes from. She like doesn't want to grow up. She wants to be daddy's little girl. And she kind of conflates that with the love the love relationship he has with her mom.
It's the daddy's little princess thing, but again, taken to an extreme. We know she can do no wrong. Daddy always praises her, like loves her because it's his child.
Doesn't believe that she is like doing these horrible things. But in the chapter that she listens to them having sex, I think it's like chapter 9 or something.
Right.
This is a Hannah chapter, so it's, all Hannah's internal monologue. She also like takes a picture of her mom sleeping. So she takes a picture of Suzette sleeping.
Nude. So her mom's naked sleeping, and then like she takes a picture of her, like her breasts and all like lopsided as she's like, mouth open.
Yeah, and she's like, she's printing all these pictures from her dad's computer, and she's like thinking of all these ways to quote make mommy go away, like eating glass, like having her eat glass, or making her eat her own hands somehow, which is great. It's like really fucked up. She's like a 7-year-old and she's coming up with all these ideas. And she steals her dad's phone. And so like she's doing like all this weird shit. She like puts together a collage basically of like images of dead people, like dead Victorian dead people. So like people who are like probably photographed after they were dead, right? Because that's how in Victorian time they, that was often the only picture that families had of a loved one was the picture that was the portrait that was taken of them after they died. Right. Very often. So there are all these dead people, and she like, pastes a picture of her mother into that too. And this is meant to like be some kind of disturbing message, obviously. So it's all like, I don't know. It's like disturbing, but it's not, I don't know. How would you describe it?
I don't know. I mean, I think it has a little to do with how the character's written. Like Hannah's written consistently, but she's kind of written consistently like a 15-year-old or like 16-year-old. With this rationalization, it's not so much child rationalizations, but sometimes it is, right? Like sometimes it is a child rationalization.
Yeah.
But all this testing, all this trying to horrify mommy, it's a little more teenage behavior than you would see in like a 7-8-year-old. But
this one
whatever.
still works for me.
Yeah.
This still feels like the right level of manipulation for a child when we're still like trying to buy in to their evil, right? Like we're still trying to buy like that she's truly evil here. Although I think I always want more. Yeah. I'm sure there's a point at which there's too much, like when she starts like cutting her mom's hair and shit. When she was initially like taking a picture of her mom while she was sleeping, I was like, yeah, this is good. Like, this is creepy.
Yeah. Sometimes a little like for me, like the medicine switch when the child switches her Crohn's medicine or her anti-diarrheal medicine. We like puts flour in the capsules. I was a little like, it's a really good story.
But it's too smart, right?
It's
like,
a little too smart. And for a 7-year-old to do that, like mix it
like
with flour.
Like to know that you like pull these capsules apart.
Not even that, but to do that cleanly, to do it with no mess, and then be able to clean it up after and like not leave anything
flour
behind.
Would stick to all that shit too.
Right. There would be flour in the medicine bottle. There would be flour on the outside of the capsules. As soon as they get wet, if you rinsed them off or so, they start melting. So it's like, all right, like you just like it's a good plot point. I like that it's in the novel. I think it's a good manipulative thing, but it was a little like, no way a 7-year-old does that cleanly and smoothly with no one, even if they could, pushing a chair up to the counter, pulling the bag of flour out without spilling. I mean, dude, I pull out flour out of my pantry or something and I'm spilling it all over the fucking counter. Like, like it's powder blowing up.
I have to admit, I was also a little let down by the results.
Oh, right. That didn't really do much.
I wanted the results to be more catastrophic than they were. Yeah. More catastrophic than I can't get off the toilet. I'm going to call the doctor.
Yeah.
Oh, he said to take more Imodium. Oh, now we're switching my medicine. Like. Right. I was like, okay.
More consequential, maybe. Because that's a big thing.
Or just like, something that felt a little more climactic. Yeah. Which it's not happening like at the actual climax of the novel, Right. That's more like when she's finding out that her medicine has been switched, actually, like, and is discovering what
Right.
actually happened. Right. But yeah,
It slowly builds. Like it gets
it
more
does slowly
extreme.
build.
Yeah.
I do wish that this moment had a little more of, a little more consequence to it.
Like maybe hospitalizing Suzette, and then like Hannah gets to be alone with Dad or something for a couple days,
Or
and
just
then,
like have her get really sick for
Right.
like a day,
Yeah.
you know?
or a couple days of like being super sick and in pain, and then maybe a hospitalization. Hannah's alone for a little. I don't know. I mean, I'm just I don't want to workshop this fucking thing, but it's
No, it's good. Like we
But,
enjoyed this, but yeah. No. But that's the thing. Like, in some of these moments, I wanted it to push into that like fucked up pop novel, like
go there. Yeah.
yeah, I wanted it to, but
Chi-
it also
child
like
gangbang in the
worked
sewers,
really
yeah.
well. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah,
Which,
go
by
there.
the way, is something that no movie version has ever included in it, right? Like nobody wants to touch it. That really, the child gangbang in the sewer.
Yeah, but what is her name?
Beverly, yeah.
Beverly? Yeah. Like, in one of are you sure in the TV one or something? Or in one of them, I thought maybe that, like, there's some indication that she's, like, trying to make out with everybody.
There's
at
a
one
love
point.
triangle in the actual story between Ben, Bill, and Beverly.
Yeah, I don't
and a little
remember.
bit of Richie in there too, but I know the newer version of it kind of tries to make Richie gay, but like the older version, and then the novel he's not. But yeah, whatever. It doesn't.
But
really
yeah,
affect
in
the
the
story,
novel, they actually all fuck in the sewers.
yeah, and that's all of them. But like the bigger plot is the love triangle. The fat little
Yeah.
boy Ben's in love with Beverly, and all the boys are in love with Beverly. Because she's like the girl that hangs out with them, and they're young, and like
Yeah.
they're into girls now.
Token
and they're, like,
female.
12, 11, yeah, like. And there is that point, right, when you're 11, 12, and like you have a friend that's a girl or whatever,
Yeah.
and it starts getting a little like, I don't know. But yeah, just like there's really disturbing stuff. I just brought it up as an example of like a really disturbing thing that you can read in a book.
Yeah.
But if you saw that on screen, everybody
Oh,
would be like,
yeah.
"Oh my god!" Like everybody.
But
would be
also,
like, "Oh
when
my
you read it
God."
in a book, you're like, what the fuck?
Right, yeah, but it's just
I mean,
easier
when
to
you read a-
swallow. Yeah.
But not by a lot. Like, it's just
Yeah.
like, what? Like, this is so. I understand already that this book is so far from reality, Like,
Right,
we're
in
talking
a
about
fantasy
evil
world.
clowns.
Yeah.
But let's keep some anchor. Let's keep one foot in the real world. Like,
Well, and maybe that's one of the lines that was like I said.
I'm sorry.
recurring
You
theme.
think all of these basically preteen boys are like gonna all like get hard and like gangbang this girl at the same time? Taking turns dipping their dicks in, like what's going on?
It's
It's just really weird.
It's a little weird, but it's also not. Well, I mean, and I think this is like the reoccurring theme, right? Like the line between pop and literary. A literary or more aspiring literary author like Stage here in this novel wouldn't go that far, because then you're out
It'd
of
be
the
more
realm.
tempered.
Yeah, then you go more to the fantasy realm, the more pop realm. But like something like Stephen King, that you go that
Stephen
far.
King's just like, I want to fulfill the teenage male fantasy.
I mean,
of
he
this
was-
gangbang occurring.
Yeah, and he was clearly doing a shitload of coke when he wrote that book. I mean,
Yeah.
like it's like 1,000, it's over 1,000 pages. Like it's just constant cocaine detail. Like, but yeah, that's like one aspect of something different. But like, yeah, I mean, that you think these different aspects that's changing, like the childhood. I don't know.
They're coming of age.
But yeah, I was gonna say, like, 10-year-old boys can get erections all the time, dude.
Oh, well,
Like,
yeah, no, I just mean, like,
they can get erections, no issue.
With each other, like in front of there's
yes.
no performance anxiety, nothing. Like,
At that age,
nah, not a factor.
yeah, no.
Yeah, I've never had a wiener. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, as a kid, like as somebody that you grow up with a penis, like you get boners all the time, but you don't know what they are yet until you're like, 8, 9, 10, and then all your friends and everybody, and you start being like, oh, breasts, like, oh, like, women, like kind of, and then you understand, you start to, I don't know how kids do it now, because with the internet, you can see all that and understand it at very young ages, but before internet
Yeah.
stuff,
I feel like girls are just like,
yeah.
what's a wiener look like?
Right, yeah.
That's all. That's only curiosity. What's it look like under there?
my wife and I talk about this all the time. Like we tell each other stories, whenever we're talking about like our childhoods or something, and then like I'll tell her a story or something of like me and my friends, and she's like, "Oh my god, my boys are so different." Like I would never even think of that as like a child. I was like, "Yes, yes, it's very different." But yeah. Speaking of this, page 135, when we find out that Alex hates porn.
Dude, yeah, tell me about this detail because I fucking missed it. Which is really funny.
It's after Hannah does that nudie picture and what's her face? Suzette finds Hannah enacting, basically copying her after she sees them have sex, like by herself in the bed.
She's like thrusting a pillow
like into her crotch.
Like, yeah, and making
noises that like Suzette was making while she was having sex with Alex and stuff.
And then says like the devil is fucking her.
Yeah, and then says the devil is fucking her, yeah.
And that she likes it.
And so Suzette thinks, oh my God, did she like happen to see porn on Alex's computer or something? Like was she searching around and like saw like something, which is something that can happen, right? As a child starts to come of age, that age of reason, right?
And that's like what she wants, right? Like that's what she's hoping to find.
Right. That would be a reasonable explanation to like
that
why
would
the
be like,
child's
okay,
behaving.
so she's just like curious about sex stuff now.
And
cool.
saw it a little too early and maybe, yeah. So, but then anyway, there's this line, right, where she's like, but that seemed unlikely. It's like, throughout the relationship, Alex never hesitated to enumerate his reasons for hating pornography whenever the subject arose. And I just wrote that. I was like, yeah, right. I was like, who is this guy? He's not real. Okay, it's not a real dude. Yeah.
Or he's like playing it. He's like, I don't know, like pretending like it's some kind of like moral thing. But
well,
like,
any man that tells you they don't is lying. Yes,
yeah,
they're lying. Oh, I don't like it. It's oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like such a weird, it's like, why is it here?
Yeah. Well, I think it's there because it's supposed to make Alex this angelic kind of thing. Like he can do no wrong, and she feels guilty about the fact that he can do no wrong, and she feels like she's doing wrong all the time.
Is it angelic to hate pornography? I mean, I guess.
Like, I think from a certain, not all women, but from a certain female perspective,
like,
yes.
Like
they would consider that a good
God-fearing one, or
God-fearing. Maybe where it stems from, but I think it more stems from like an insecurity thing, or like
okay.
I don't, or like it's usually younger female, like younger women that'll have a problem with it because they don't quite understand what it is and like what men use it for, kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a fantasy. So if anybody's telling you, if any man, if they're not like a Mormon, but shit, dude, even if they're a fucking Mormon, okay, like, dude, like, there is no getting around like this kind of male impulse for like, this is just not.
Yeah, dude, I know. I read Twilight.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I know all about male impulses.
Yeah, but Twilight isn't even like touched.
Yeah,
because it's, and I don't want it to be like, oh, it's like it, but it is a very female kind of like fantasy.
It's clearly a female fantasy of like what men are like.
A good man would not do that,
or a
like,
bad boy.
Yeah,
like it's those two.
And it's just a joke. Like it's like that's not real. But like yeah. Like I said, I think it was in there for some type of like story element to kind of make Alex seem even more angelic, so that Suzette feels more guilty that she's like not as good as her husband or something. Or
yeah, there's a whole like weird, I don't know, like sexual.
Well, when I read that, I was just like,
I mean, it's not like weird. It's just like it in moments made me laugh. We do learn that later on that Suzette hasn't had sex with anybody but Alex, and that she's never wanted to.
Right. Is that real? I mean, I guess it is real, right? Like, is that a real thing? Or it's like a certain type of person?
I don't know that person.
Okay, I think you could say, okay, she had Crohn's, so she was embarrassed. She didn't want to have those interactions with people before Alex.
I think she just didn't.
She like stopped
live
herself.
A life,
right?
Like she just didn't live a life before him. She didn't have any kind of romantic life before him. Is all that she's saying. Yeah,
so it's more like a character.
He was the first person that
she
was really interested in, and therefore the only person is how I.
That's how I interpret it too.
Actually took it, but like.
But I think of it. Yeah, it's more.
But
of a
I would think,
you
were never uninterested. Like I somehow doubt that as you attended all of your schooling years, there was never a single male that you looked at and found attractive and like, oh, I like it.
Right. Well, and she doesn't say that. She just says she wasn't sexually active with it. But like, I guess it's more of a character thing than it is like
She
a
said-
fantasy thing. It's more of like a character is like, yeah, she's a little naive. She's a little unexperienced or whatever kind of thing.
Yeah, and she has like this fantasy at one point. So like what's happening? So like this sort of escalates. I guess we should get back to Hannah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like her bad behavior just kind of keeps escalating. So the next big thing that I think happens, hang on. There are a lot of references to art.
Well, it's one of her hobbies. She's
Yeah,
wanted to be
so
an
she-
artist, and she actually was a designer for the firm that she and Alex met. This is before Alex started his own firm, I guess. And like, you know, when they met when they were younger, he was a little older. She was right out of college, was hired to be a designer for the architecture firm. And so there, I mean, that's a little kind of cliche, like the woman wanting to be a painter or whatever, like kind of like, you know, that's been in novels since Jane Austen, right? Like, I mean, even before that, you know, my real true calling is painting, you know.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say about Hannah?
Yeah, she has like all. I just remember there's this one part where she talks about like they're going to visit the school, and she's like, it's like the school that they're hoping Hannah will attend. And
The
she's
guy with the eye
bitchi-
patch.
and she's bitching about the disdain for like the art of ordinary children, and the school stinks of not enough money.
Right. Yeah.
I think this
So-
is before not the school she actually ends up going to. This is like when she goes and interviews for the school, and they're like, "Nah, take her to this other school."
When she starts barking at the
Yeah, and
headmistress
she starts
or whatever,
barking.
yeah.
And finally, like I think this is when Alex learns, because there are actual consequences, right? Like
Right.
she barks at this headmistress or whatever, and he's like, "Yeah, so she might not work out here, but here's the school where she might work out."
Right. Yeah.
And so now, like, they're acting all nice. They're all in this sort of good mood. Suzette's secretly kind of happy, right, that this happened, because now she can be like, yeah, it's a real thing. This happens. This is how she behaves. Someone else beside me has seen it. And there are actual consequences to it. So they sort of just, like, don't really... They're just really pleasant with Hannah. Suzette's really like, every time there's a prospect of like Hannah's gonna go to school now, it's like relief, right? Which is expected, right? Like no one, even like the person who like loves parenting, does not want to spend every day all day at home trying to make their kids learn shit,
Yeah.
right?
Well, she said she never, and she keeps bringing it back up. Like she never intended to like homeschool a child. Like that wasn't something that she had like planned in her life, you know. So she had, you know, had these ambitions. Alex has a big firm where he has getting big contracts. That's part of it too. Is he gets a nice big contract for a new building where he gets a magazine spread about his firm and all that. And they don't really say what city they live in, but we can assume Pittsburgh. Okay, so
There are references to there's one early reference to like Oakland, and at first I was like, oh, California, and then I read other references and it was Pittsburgh.
yeah, so that's a good kind of a literary way to show the setting too, right? You're not outright saying, oh, it's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but you're giving landmarks, street names, you know, town square things, courthouse, you know,
Right.
whatever, schools, like having to drive in the New York State, like they have to drive up to New York, upstate New York for like one of the schools eventually, you know, like 3-hour drive. But yeah, that's a good thing. But and I guess I keep bringing this up, but I thought that, you know, Zoje Stage in this and the novel itself, it does a really good job of taking advantage of, we've kind of already talked about it a little bit, but like the burden of motherhood as kind of like a horror story topic. I think it's very creative. I think it's very well, because, you know, The Omen, even like, we need to talk about, Kevin talks about this a lot since I've been reading it, like the mother in that is very much kind of Sylvia Plath style. Like, you know, I never really didn't really understand what I was getting into, kind of thing. Wasn't what everybody said it would be, kind of stuff. But yeah, this kind of burden of motherhood. I don't know if I'm reading into it too much or I'm just too obsessed
yeah.
with it.
I mean, it's definitely here. I mean, right after Hannah witnesses her parents fucking, the next chapter, which is Suzette, it starts freshly fucked and the sun was shining.
Freshly fucked. Freshly fucked.
Yeah, it really goes fuck forward. Like in the places in the places where sex happens, it's just like, yes, let's talk about it. Let's linger on this more. But that's also when Suzette discovers that her hair has been cut. And so it really quickly goes from like, yes, freshly fucked and the sun is shining. Great morning to, oh my fucking God. Like, I need to not strangle my kid. My husband will never forgive me. She cut off like my hair. It's ridiculous.
And then that's a fear. She has to get it cut short because the child ruined her hairstyle, and she wasn't sure if her husband would like her hair short. So she was like also, self-conscious and all that kind of stuff. But like, yeah, so like your child's doing horrific things to you, like, and then more so than usual, right? If we're talking about the burden of motherhood, it's usually not this horrific or this extreme with like a problem child trying to kill you. Like, I think everybody knows that, but like it takes that to the extreme. And I think it's a great creative way to make it kind of horrific, to take the burden of motherhood and then make it a subject of horror.
And well, this doesn't even have to be horrific. This just has to be like, oh my God, like you would scream. Like if this is what you were dealing with every day, like you would lose your fucking mind, right? If you just like couldn't, if you had like no control over your kid's behavior. But then it does like continuously escalate, right? So she's going to the school now where like her barking isn't going to get her expelled, right?
Yeah, it's like a special school.
Yeah, and she keeps coming up with ways
to get kicked out.
To sort of get out of class or like be put in the quiet room, blah blah blah. And one day she gets, so the next big thing I think that happens, let me double check. But the next really like big thing that happens, well, first, like there are also all of these references to Suzette saying things like when she gets really into art for a couple days because she's like in a good mood and everyone's playing nice, and she's just like talking about how she wants to make art, and she's like she would make something else, something better than Hannah.
Kind of rediscovering her passions
Yeah.
that were taken away from the burden of
And I
motherhood.
might be conflating two moments here, but like, yeah, she keeps referring to like, I'll make something better than Hannah. Right? Like she really resents Hannah, and she has somehow replaced her creative pursuits with something much less satisfying to her. Yeah. Which, like, of course, like if you have like a kid that can't say I love you, like that's, I think a real and legitimate fear, right, for, any young woman or like young parent, right? Who or aspire, somebody who wants to be a parent. But yeah, the next really, when does it happen? When does she?
What are you talking about?
When does it happen with that kid?
Where she let the kid that has the helmet?
Yeah.
When she lets forces the kid to bang his head against the wall.
Yeah.
So, like, she gets kicked out of all these schools because she's so horrible. So she ends up going to school for kids that have, like, not problems like she has, but, like, really bad kind of, like, problems, like, in terms of, like, compulsive, like, self-harm and things, like kids banging their head against the wall because of anxiety or whatever, autism, severe severe learning disabilities and things where people they can't function, so they have to go to these special schools, right, where they give them special attention because they really can't function in a normal classroom setting kind of thing. And like, Hannah, her problem isn't necessarily that, right? Like she's smart enough to know what she's doing. So like,
yeah. And she has clear disdain for these kids. On page 138, she talks about how one of the teachers was so placid about her barking and she'd give it a day or two. to like study and figure out what to do. And she says, just thinking about the other children ruined her good mood. If only they would all die and she could have the school to herself. She'd seen little blips on the news about mass shootings and had heard Daddy rant about the gun problem. Not everyone needs a gun. Children do not need guns. But maybe Daddy was mistaken. So yeah, it's like very clear. I was like, holy shit. And this is like a 7-year-old.
Right.
Considering mass shootings. So yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice, the child's thinking, yeah. So there's like that level of it too. Hold up, I gotta pee.
Yeah, so the next big thing that happens is we have this kid. So Hannah finds her way into the quiet room at school. And what happens? She takes off this kid's helmet.
Yeah, she goes in the quiet room, and there's like a supervisor in the quiet room. And there's a kid in there that has severe problems, right? So he's actually has to wear like, one of those kind of like epilepsy helmets or something where they give it like they strap onto kids sometimes, because if they're just constantly hurting themselves, like smashing their heads up against things and stuff, like it just prevents major injuries until you can get them to stop doing that.
Yeah, and that's what this kid's doing.
Yeah, and Hannah makes the kid freak out by like barking at him, and then like takes his helmet off of him, like so that he starts like frantically, compulsively like bashing his head to the wall, where he's like making himself bleed, giving himself concussion, severe damage to a developing brain type thing, and it's because the teacher had left them alone in the room for like a minute and a half, because she had to like run down the hall or something. And that was enough that was like Hannah's moment, and that gets her kicked out of the school. That would like, they tried, that they were desperate because it's like a special school for kids that have problems.
Yeah, so right after that is like Hannah makes her first attempt. Right, she gets kicked out of school, and right after this, Hannah makes her first attempt to kill her mother.
Right.
Really poorly thought out, but very elaborate.
Because she's
not
7.
very elaborate, but like...
It is kind of like a 7-year-old's idea.
Yeah, like... Like puts thumbtacks, I guess, next to the bed on Suzette's side, so that when Suzette gets up, she stands, on a bunch of thumbtacks. And I guess her plan was for her to like crawl over, or like
fall on the ground so that Hannah could smash her head in with a hammer. It was the plan.
Yeah.
But
so she's like waiting by the door
yeah.
with the hammer or something.
But
I guess
Suzette
then
falls back onto the bed because like she hurts her feet and immediately like gets off them, kind of flops back onto the bed, and then like looks at her feet and has like like a 24 tacks stuck in her feet, to the point where like she has to like start pulling them out. And then Hannah comes in, but like Hannah sees that she's not on the floor, so she can't reach her with the hammer, and just kind of stands there hesitating. And then Suzette kind of puts it together and is like, oh, did she just try to kill me? Like, did my daughter just try to fucking kill me?
Yeah. For a moment, they stared at each other, taking in their respective weapons. Hannah double fisting a hammer, Suzette with her cell phone. What are you doing? She could almost see the intention in her daughter's face, a murderous gleam. But Hannah took only one step into the room. Well, she yells at her, "You fucking little monster. I'm calling the police." Yeah, that was an intense one. It was an intense moment. And again, for something that like, I'm going to keep saying like, oh, I wanted like the next step to happen. Like I wanted her to like try to swing a hammer or something.
Like hit an elbow or something and break her elbow or something.
Yeah, or like something, But for a moment that doesn't have like a major health consequence, but still is like disturbing.
Right.
It works really well because it is like a very like big moment. It's like right as we're like really climbing toward the climax. It's well paced. It's moving pretty quickly at this point, and the whole book moves pretty quickly. But I think it's really well done for something that you're like, yeah, I mean, like, that's creative. Like, I wouldn't have, I didn't expect it.
Yeah, and it builds the escalation, so like the whole thing's like slowly escalating. Where Hannah's outbursts get more and more severe, and eventually they escalate to this point. And by the time she tries to kill her, I mean, we're about like 2/3 through the novel at that point.
Yeah,
and
and
she like does that hammer thing, and that's when it starts to go even more. So it's the first attempt that she tries to kill her, and that's when they.
And this is when Alex is also becoming like, holy shit, what the fuck? Like, you know, what's going on? We don't get to see as much like the burden on him because obviously he's not the one being attacked.
Right.
But I think she still does a good job of showing us that, at least toward the end.
And this is when they like, after the hammer incident, is when they start taking her to the therapist. So like now there's a therapist involved.
Yeah.
I guess we kind of blew past this, but when she talks about like the school smelling like it doesn't have enough money, and it's just, there is like a class element, right? So clearly Suzette and Alex are upper class. This guy owns his own architecture firm. They have money. That's not an issue.
They're the only ones on their street with like some fancy, like super energy efficient, like modern home
that he designed and she decorated.
You know, are not, it doesn't seem like they're in a position where they're hurting for money. Right. Like they, it's like totally okay that Suzette is like home with the kid, not working.
They can afford therapists. They can afford to go to these different schools.
Right.
They can pay tuition for like private stuff, you know, like, so they have this kind of upper class air to them. And with that,
they talk about shopping at Trader Joe's.
And with that comes an expectation of child behavior usually, right? Like you expect your child to not be bad. Oh, like, you know, okay. Yeah. And there's a lot of like I guess Zoje Stage is Swedish or like parentage.
I assume there are a lot of. I mean, there's a lot of
stressed.
Swedish in it.
Yeah, and that's stressed, and like they have like the Swedish fire ritual that they like do, which is a little boring, like a little lame, but
yeah. So there's this whole thing that, and this is somehow in Hannah's mind, like she's gonna perform some ritual where she's gonna cast a spell during this fire ritual to, like, you know, end her mother pretty much. And this is all, again, they're going back to the thing where they're playing nice, they're just keeping everyone happy until they get to the therapist on Monday or whatever, right? It's just like, let's just temper everything, which is like,
and they don't want to leave Suzette alone with Hannah, so Alex is staying home from work, and then he gets this idea that, you know, this fire ritual, maybe we can help Hannah, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, and
it's a little boring, but...
And there's this whole thing of, like, you know, it's been 2 days, and it's been great, and we're all pretending it's fine, and I've just been doing my art thing and drinking champagne, and I'm passionate again, you know? And it's just like she's talking about drinking and being passionate and like getting like savagely fucked from behind by her husband and like having like Hannah be their little wild pet. And I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, what the, like, is this like, and she starts like referring to her hands as like important. Be like, these are visionary hands. These are hands with a vision. I was like, what? And, you know, and that's like pretty late in the book. This is like in maybe chapter 30. She like, yeah, she refers to, this is page 233. She hadn't showered in days and didn't really want to soften the comforting scabs that had formed on the soles of her feet. She couldn't remember when last she had gone so long without cleaning herself or some part of the house. The thought wasn't unappealing that vines could grow up through the floors, snake along the walls, fill the house like a jungle, and she in her rags could climb them and find a perch on the ceiling in that savagely deconstructed domesticity There'd be no need to speak. She'd reek of musk and Alex would fuck her from behind. Maybe there'd even be a place for Hannah there, barking like a chimpanzee, a wild child, a happy pet.
In the next paragraph, she closed her sketchbooks and repackaged all the supplies. This is just what she's thinking as she's sketching, like how much she wants to get fucked in like her smelly pussy or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
not,
Reek of musk.
Yeah,
She'd
musk.
Reek of musk.
that
Maybe it
human
was.
odor.
Yeah. Yeah, and she talks about like, oh, maybe it was the day spent sipping champagne, but I feel so okay now. And she also says she would selfishly shut the doors or leave things undone to have her hands look as they did now, blackened by her art. She gazed at them as if they were sculptures, not her own body. These were hands that did important things. These hands followed the will of vision, of spontaneity. They caressed dreams from the dark fold. And this felt very like, I'm an artist. I shop at Trader Joe's. I buy only fair trade organic.
I post my paintings on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah, this was one of those moments where I was like, okay, I don't love Suzette in this moment. I don't care that I don't love her though. You know, I thought it was funny. I thought it was a little obnoxious. Like in this moment, I find her a little obnoxious. I don't know that I've ever met someone who thinks of themselves as an artist that isn't a little bit obnoxious, including some that I like. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a bit much, and it made me laugh. And I was like, yeah, is this how we feel when we make art? We're just like, yeah, I don't want to fuck and think about my visionary hands. Look at my visionary hands.
Freshly fucked. Freshly fucked.
Freshly fucked and the sun is shining. What a day. Yeah.
And
then
Suzette's always guilty during that fire ritual. She's feeling guilty that she doesn't speak enough Swedish or whatever. Like,
yeah. This is also after Suzette has this like weird fucked up dream about like someone she knew in school or something, in high school or in elementary school or something. And then it's like she's like, you know, there's like something to do with like some burned kid. And this girl from
when she was in the hospital when she was a kid for her Crohn's or whatever, there was like a burned up kid or something, and like
she reflected on a dream she'd had the night before. This is on page 236. In it, a friend she hadn't seen since elementary school, now grown up, told her to keep an eye out for Greta, a young woman unknown to Suzette who was asleep in another room. She's blind, but she won't admit it, said the friend, heading for the door. Apparently they all lived together in an apartment that, in the way of dreams, was excessively large and both resplendent and run down, with damask upholstered, curving couches and ceilings rotten with water stains. Greta needs assistance, but don't be fooled by her confidence. And the friend left. Dream Suzette waited for the mysterious Greta to emerge, and when she did, she realized the full extent of Greta's disabilities. Emaciated and petite, the woman looked as if she'd been consumed in a fire. Yeah, and there's all this shit about, like, you know, she doesn't have eyes, but, like, she has, like, glass prosthetics or something.
has
blah,
little
blah, blah,
nubs
blah.
for feet.
I was like, oh, shit, is this foreshadowing? Is this gonna be
Right.
Suzette? I was like, is she gonna fucking have nubs for her feet?
Always makes me think of that NoFX song, dude. Nubs. We think that she's totally rad. She's nubs. Which is about a real person, listeners. Anybody interested in punk rock or the history of it? There was like
What did you think about this dream, though? Oh,
Uh,
no, go on.
I thought it was like, yeah, I thought it would be some type of foreshadowing too. At least it was leaning that way, especially because this is before the fire ritual and all that they're about to do. So it definitely had this kind of like, and burning is very horrific. Like me personally, and I'm sure everybody kind of has this kind of gut reaction when you see bad burn, like damage on the human body. It's hard to look at. Like it is very destructive, right? Like it destroys. And even if you survive something like that, right? Like even if you didn't get like your face burned or something, like you're horribly disfigured, like the feeling, the nerve endings have been damaged in all your body. So you never feel the same way you did before. All that, like it really damages, and it's disturbing. Like it's a disturbing thing to picture or describe, right? I'm not telling anybody to walk through a burn unit of their local ICU or something, but you will feel nauseated almost when especially if you see kids, you see this stuff that suffer. Like it's hard to look at. So it would be a good foreshadowing, right? And we get a little bit of this eventually when we find out that Hannah does try to set her on fire.
Yeah. And this is also the chapter when we see Alex. We sort of see Alex as he actually is, or Suzette kind of sees Alex as he actually is. Hannah's just like tossed some picture of this witch into the fire.
And is muttering a spell.
Alex sank back in his chair, tugging it closer to the fire. Suzette read exhaustion in his body and understood then how hard it had been for him, pretending for days that he wasn't upset or worried and trying to keep everyone calm. So he's been playing like the, sort of like the martyr role.
Yeah.
Right? He's being the good husband. He's like shoving it down.
There's hints of that. Like we don't get Alex's perspective, so we don't see it as much, but there's hints of that too. So like the burden of fatherhood, which is different than the burden of motherhood, right? Like this kind of things that are required that you have to do to hold it together or whatever. They're different. And maybe if we got Alex's perspective, we would see more of that, like his internal struggle with like what he's trying to project outward and what he's trying to make sure everybody's okay. But fixing the issues.
We get a sense that he does enjoy being like the good dad, though. Like, right? He enjoys the adoration of his daughter, and that, maybe prevents him from seeing certain things, but it also probably makes it harder for him to cope, right, with the prospect that actually that's not who she is. But whatever. So, Hannah attempts to set her mother on fire. Alex walks away for a minute, and Hannah just picks up a stick and starts, like, flinging coals at her mom, and then goes up to her.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because she was, like, silently trying to cast a spell. She was pointing and speaking silent words at her mother like a fucking weirdo.
And Alex leaves because Suzette spills her wine, and she spills it down the front of herself, and Alex gets up, so let's get a rag or something, runs into the kitchen, and little girl Hannah thinks that wine is as flammable as like tequila or like some other like alcohol. Is like, if as a child you don't understand that wine and beer do not catch fire like hard liquor does, like kind of thing. Like, so she thinks it'll burn up if she puts a flame or a spark to it, and it doesn't because it's wine. And so she like pokes this flaming stick that she pulls from the fire into her mother's cheek.
Yeah, which is like when shit gets intense. I was like, oh fuck, is she about to burn a hole like right through her mom's cheek? Like I thought that's what was happening.
Right.
It's like, this is where it's gonna get fucked up. This is where I'm gonna get that moment. This is where shit's gonna get fucking real.
And Suzette panics, so she brushes it away, and she has, your bare hands, you're just doing it, so she's burning the shit out of her hands to like get these coals and stuff off of her,
right?
Get the stick out of her daughter's
Which
hand.
is like what you do, if you've like ever tried to like, light something and it,
right, or you're at a campfire and something blows on you, you're like, oh my god, you like brush it off with your bare hands, and then you burn your hands. But it's better than burning like your face, I guess, because and this is right after, like you said, the scene where she talks about how much she adored her hands, how important her hands were to her, and then they get destroyed because her daughter tries to set her on fire.
So yeah,
So
in
there
this
is
moment,
foreshadowing.
Alex freaks the fuck out. He runs over, he takes Hannah, and he like tosses her away.
Right, so she hurts her wrist because he like
And
shoves
so
her.
yeah, and she hurts her wrist, and then
Sounds like The Shining,
everyone has to
Stephen
load
King.
in the car and go to patient first.
Sounds like The Shining, Stephen King. He breaks
Everyone-
breaks Danny's arms because he is trying to get the kid out of the way and pushes him too hard or grabs him too hard, and it's a kid, right? So
Yeah, so everyone's freaking out. Hannah's really confused. She's like, why didn't this work? Why is Daddy not happy with me? And so it's clear that like she also, I think this book does a pretty good job of making us feel that this girl is like malicious. Like actively malicious toward her mother. Also genuinely doesn't understand certain like she can't conceive of her father having negative emotions toward her, which on the one hand is baffling, and on another hand is like, yeah, I could believe that for a 7-year-old.
she's 7, yeah, she doesn't understand.
Yeah.
And she's only experienced her father giving her praise and love, so she hasn't experienced what she experiences with her mother. And you see this all the time, right? Like I think this is
When we say it out loud, seems hard to buy, though. For 7 years of
Yeah.
parenting, you've never had a screaming child, not once.
yeah.
Anyway, but that's not important. So they go into like, okay, they go into fix it mode. They go to patient first. Both Suzette and Hannah get questioned as to whether someone in the house is hurting them, implying that Alex is an abuser. They both say no. Well, no. Hannah is like, what the fuck? Basically.
That could have been an interesting plot to explore too, if like the doctors report them because they think Alex is abusing his wife and
Right.
child, and that starts getting more escalated. Because once you get the legal aspect, like this is part of the Omen too, right? Like the ending of the Omen, where like he's trying to kill the child, but the cops are after him, and so he doesn't get to because there's legal consequence, and there's legal consequences for killing your child. Like so that starts happening. Like just add a little bit of drama. So it could have been, but by this point, it's like 300 pages in, so it's like full length novel. You don't need. If we went into that, it would be like another 400. It'd be like 400, 500 page novel. But yeah, so I understand why they didn't go into something like that. But yeah, that was it could have been a good little twist there. But I guess it's meant to show structurally how the parents come together. So Alex and Suzette come together to be like, well, hold on, we're a team here, and the kid is the problem, not
Well, and Suzette
either
is
of
the one
us.
that's like,
Yeah.
it's my daughter. And then the doctor's like, well, not touching this. I'm gonna walk away now. Because it's like they're willing to deal with it if it's a husband, who's abusing his wife, but not if a child is the abuser.
Right.
Or if it's a problem child, they don't want to touch that. So, yep, they go back to, she feels really worried about her face.
Well, because then it's
Because
the
at
same
one point,
thing.
at
that
one point he
nubs,
looks at her.
yeah.
She's like, "Is it that bad?" And he was like, "Holy shit, we're going to patient. We're going to the hospital." And she's like, Let's go to patient first. It'll be faster." So you get the sense it's pretty fucked up.
I mean, a severe burn like that, yeah, like this isn't just like burning yourself on the stove or on some boiling water. Or
Yeah,
something.
no, this is somebody
flame being
intentionally-
pushed into your cheek, like
Yeah, like
this is
imagine being
damaging.
branded.
Yeah,
but, like-
damage.
Yeah.
Forever scarred. Like you're gonna need to get plastic surgery to remove the scar. Like no amount of neosporin, because once you burn down those skin cells, like they never reform. Like it like destroys part of the body, which is horrific. It's a good trope for horror and stuff like that. But it's like, yeah, it's very damaging. I mean, that's that's a terrible fear. Like I am always terrified if somebody's burning or something in like horror or there's like
God,
burn
yeah.
scars.
It's
There's
the
like
worst.
certain like body stuff that just really gets me kind of squeamish, and I'm like, oh, I'm scared. It's scary shit. And it does kind of like everybody says that's vain, right? Like it's vanity, like you do, like because she was already obsessed with her beauty and like not being good enough for her husband.
Well, this is when she's like, she tried so hard to keep herself beautiful for her husband, and like, oh my God, like, like I guess we're just kind of over that. We're done pretending to be beautiful. Like or you know. And she talks about like her disdain for people who like go out in sweatpants and shit.
Oh,
And
yeah.
she's like, well, now I guess I'm that person.
Which is correct. Yeah, you should be disdained of people that go out in sweatpants.
You
But
know, fucking ever. Got trader toes and sweatpants. I don't give a fuck.
yeah. Yeah. But like, yeah, and people
They're
like,
all wearing leggings anyway.
prideful, like everyone's prideful, people pride about beauty and stuff, but like, you know, I think to say that it's only pride or something like is being unfair to what beauty means, not just culturally, but like to humanity. Like when you're a beautiful person, like, you know, you get something out of that. Like
Right.
you're almost worshipped in some regard, statues, you know. It's a little different in our culture now. You know, you just get magazine spreads or something, not building statues or whatever to you. But
Or just attention or free
yeah,
shit.
attention, free things. You get treated nicer. You know, Jim Gaffigan had that funny bit like years ago where he's like, oh, you know,
Things
life-
might come more
Yeah.
easily to you.
Yeah, Jim Gaffigan has that bit,
Yeah.
dude. He's like, you know, life's a little beautiful. Life's a little easier for the beautiful people. Can we all admit that? Like, kind of like, you
Yeah.
know, like, it's like, you know, you got a little easier than everybody else. Like, it gets you something. Like, it's not just this, like, and I get, you know, okay, it's a bad character flaw if that's all you care about. But like to say that it's not a real concern that everybody has all the time, and it isn't just culturally enforced, it's more than that kind of thing. Like there's a little
Right.
bit of stuff ingrained in us. So it just adds to the, you know, the kind of
But we do get
grotesque
the
or
sense, we do get
horrific
the
elements.
sense though that she was like someone who's like, look at this,
Yeah.
look at the art of these like, you know, these poor school kids
Yeah,
at
I
this
mean,
poor school.
I'll be honest.
Look at these schlubby people.
I'll be honest. It made me like Suzette more when I
Yeah,
would
she's
see
very.
that
I
kind of
mean,
stuff,
like,
yeah.
so for somebody who is like very, you know, we get the sense that this is like a very little like liberal like family, but they're a little, they're a little posh.
Yeah, everybody is. Yeah,
They have their judgments.
because most people that are buying Coach bags can't afford buying Coach bags, right?
Yeah.
Okay, like, but like everybody buys them, but like,
Well, yeah, you know who the one place where I feel like I always saw Coach bags was like in high school, dude.
well, that was when it
It's
first
always
blew
like
up.
high
Yeah.
school girls like with Coach bags. I don't see that as much anymore.
Then again, we're not. in
People
high
still
school,
have
so
different designer bags, yeah.
Coach kind of fell out of fashion after we got out of high school for a little while.
Yeah.
And I guess because it was bought by that big company after it got that huge blow up, and they just started putting it everywhere. Like I live in Vegas,
yeah.
so like if you walk through any of the casino, you know, whenever my wife and I go out or something, we go to the casinos because that like on the strip is where all the nice restaurants are and like the shows and you know concerts, comedy show, you know whatever it is we're going to, and you know you just walk around there and it's like. I don't know what the fuck we were just talking about. I just lost my...
Coach bags.
Oh, yeah. And then there's Coach stores. Like, if you walk through the malls,
Dude.
every
They were
mall,
never that good.
Dude, and they're always empty. Like, there's nobody
Yeah.
shopping in them, but there's these big glass displays of, like, $1,500 purses, $5,000 purses, like, backpacks, like... $10,000 luggage sets, and I'm just like,
No one
who is
fucking wants
buying?
that.
Like,
No
who is
one.
going in there to like? How do these stores make rent? Like, it's very expensive to pay rent to be in one
And
of the
that's
casino
not even the
malls, like-
brand. That's not even the brand
Yeah.
people are buying anymore. It's not a hot brand anymore. But
All
it
of
was
them,
Coach
man.
bags and like Vera Bradley and like you know, North Vase quarter zips. That's what it was. Low rise jeans.
Yeah, we should bring low-rise jeans. Should come back, dude. Low-rise
No,
jeans are
dude,
good.
they're awful. They are
I guess they're
not
hard to wear.
flattering. They are
Yeah.
not flattering on a majority of people. They should
Right,
stay
yeah.
gone. The
I always think of,
high-waisted jean is suitable for everyone. It's doing us all a favor. Let's just keep it let's keep it in the middle. We're denim centrists. We want what is most flattering for most people.
I always think of the low-rise jeans. Always makes me think of Jessica Biel and the Texas Chainsaw remake in like the early 2000s.
Oh
when we
yeah,
were,
but
like,
it makes me think of like Britney Spears' current Instagram
Britney Spears.
posts.
Oh yeah. Oh
Like,
yeah.
because
We
she
wanna get
still
into that.
wears
Yeah.
them, and it bums me out. And it's just like, you are spinning, doing the angles, you're kind of hysterical. Like, you might be crying, you might be laughing. I don't know what's up. I feel bad. But also, like, get higher jeans. Like, it's just, it looks like you're living
Well,
in 2002, and
yeah.
you need to update this look.
Britney's
never
a special
updated
case.
her
yeah.
look.
Britney's a well, I mean,
Except for that time when she shaved her head. But after
it's,
that, she grew it back, and she never quite updated her look beyond 2006.
Well, for her, it's like, we don't have to get into Britney's stuff, but it's like it's a test case. It's like literally a prime example is why you should never make your kid a child star, because
Yeah.
they're just going to be fucked up forever, like literally severely mentally handicapped because of.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, also, it's, like, extraordinary that she survived, like, 2008, you know? I remember talking to my dad about it, and him being like, my God, like...
That's
why are
another
people
thing.
gonna leave this chick alone. Like,
That's another good thing when like the mob like kind of fervor where everybody was like, oh my God, we got to save Britney, she's being abused or whatever, and now we saved Britney, and what is she doing? She's posting nudes on it. Like that's literally all she's doing is like doing crazy shit that we're all like,
sad. It just she's one of those
Exactly.
people that
It's
feels, like,
sad.
emotionally a little bit stunted to me,
Of
and I think that's probably
course.
true of a lot of like Hollywood child stars.
oh
like,
my God, yes.
I'm sure it really,
Example
really
after
fucks you up.
example, dude.
Yeah.
Like you just every child star, like okay, Aaron Carter just
She literally just
know?
does her choreographed spin
yeah,
with her arms up like this
right.
in her really low rise jeans, but at an angle that's like above, tilted down, so you can see her whole body and her legs look long, but it's really weird. It looks like you're like a 16-year-old trying to post a sexy picture for the first time because MySpace just became a thing. Or,
It's a good way to describe it, yeah, because that's what
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, it's
That's what it
teenage
feels
behavior. Yeah, it's like a teenage girl that just discovered that she can use sex to manipulate or get what she wants, type thing. Like that's how
Yeah.
Britney's behaving now as a 40-year-old mother of 3 or whatever that she's not allowed to see
how did
because she
we get
lost.
here? How did we get here though? Britney
Yeah.
Spears, low rise jeans. We got from low rise jeans to Britney Spears. What was
Yeah.
before low rise jeans?
Suzette being like pompous and or judgmental of like poor people or
And then brands, and then things that were cool into like 2006,
Yeah.
Coach bags. Okay, I understand the progression.
yeah, it happens, dude.
All right. It's just like, is this relevant to something?
And you see Jessica Biel and then Texas
yeah,
Chainsaw
anyway,
Massacre remake, and you're just like,
Those
yeah,
are all of my
low-rise
reasons
jeans.
why low-rise jeans shouldn't come back. They're not flattering on anyone our age, and not flattering on most people who should be wearing them. Like,
So
you know,
they're
it's
pretty
a very,
flattering on Jessica Biel in that movie. Yeah, like,
they're flattering on a size 0.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you go watch that movie and then tell
And-
me that Jessica Biel isn't hot as shit in those.
No,
those
well,
low-rise,
because
yeah.
Jessica Biel is hot as shit.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
She also has, you know, like if you, okay, again, not trying to be a dick. If you look at Britney Spears, she's not like a particularly curvy
Right,
person,
yeah.
right? Like she is pretty straight with narrow hips, right? She's
Right.
got sort of,
Very normal, like nothing, like yeah.
but like not, you know, she's like very feminine, but her figure isn't like, you know, very hourglass.
Average.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, that's the shape that I mean, like you have to be like a narrow person basically.
You have to
Or
be one of the
Well, it's not, I
model.
guess it's not even that. You just have to have like no
love handles.
love handles. You've got to have no belly. You've got to
Yeah.
have no meat on those love handles.
Right. Yeah.
All right. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a dude or a girl. Like,
that's
and
hard to
you
do
have
past
to
the
also
age of
accept
30,
they're
yeah.
not going to stay up. So you have to
Yeah.
have a good enough like top ass. You know? And no one has that. It's just like, it's just your crack. Like,
Oh, yeah.
and I don't know, like, did you ever look at that and go, yeah, fuck yeah, that's some good crack? Like,
When
you
I
know,
could see
like,
when I could see a beautiful
you-
when I could see a hot woman's ass crack in low-rise jeans, did I ever think
like,
that
oh
was
yeah,
great?
I want to
Yes.
like, I want to
Yes.
slide my dick in that crack.
Yes. Yes.
Because I see that and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Like, because I never want to see the top of a dude's ass crack. I want to see full ass or no ass. Like, the whole thing or none of it. Because there's no good way.
Yeah, it does obscure it some, but yeah.
But, I mean, there's nothing in it for me. It's just like the top of a male ass. I'd rather see a man's thigh than see the top of his crack.
Dang, short shorts over low rise. What's it?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Get those 6-inch inseams, boys, and
they're great. Trying to talk my husband into it all the time. Great legs.
the short shorts. They're not even that short, but they are more like kind of normal. Like the baggy.
They should be mid thigh. They should be mid thigh.
Yeah, so about that 6-inch to 8-inch inseam for a lot of
It's
men.
a bit long.
We can talk men's fashion. Anybody, listeners, in the next Q&A, you can ask me. I'm very
Unless
into
you're
it.
obscenely tall and have really long thighs, 8 inches is too long, boys.
Yeah. But I understand also. I feel like you're like a little heavier as a guy. You don't want to show off.
They also make them
flabby
too
legs.
narrow. I think
Yes, as somebody that has.
I think
large
that's
legs.
a problem. Well, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Like, I find this to be constantly an issue. I know very few women who don't also have this problem. But yeah,
Right.
like they're also too narrow. They shouldn't, like, I don't always want fitted shorts, and I don't think men do either. And they should be short, kind of wide, give you enough room to give you a breeze. Like, I want to be able to buy men's shorts that are a decent length for me, that are comfortable.
Yeah, I've read a few interesting articles for like trans men that, like, when they're trying to buy clothes because they have a more like female body.
Yeah, it's probably really
they have
hard.
to get stuff tailored. Because
I mean,
the leg
depending on, again,
opening,
like, because we're all, of varying proportions, right? But yeah,
Right.
women tend to have wider hips.
right. So like the leg
And
openings
especially
are like too
in
small.
proportion
You have like,
to
tailor
the
leg
rest of your
opening.
body.
Yeah.
That's why, like, if you buy a men's t-shirt as a woman, in a size that, like, actually fits your body, and not like a size bigger than you need, it might be really tight around your, like, hips, right? Because it doesn't flare out at all for you
right.
to accommodate for that. That's why it might be tight around your tits, because men have wider shoulders, so it accommodates that, but probably not more chest space.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am a big fan of some of the unisex fashion choices the industry is making. It is going well for me in that regard.
Yeah. Sophie likes to wear men's clothing, so
Yeah, I wear a lot of men's clothing. I'm wearing a men's t-shirt right now. In fact, we
I
just bought
can't.
these.
I just can't fit into women's clothes. Like there is no.
I mean, I'm
fitting
sure,
like-
just all it takes is the right moo-moo, man.
into- Maybe I guess I could fit into a very.
You could fit
large-
it. You could fit into a kilt, and it would be fine. But we would make
Kilt,
assumptions
yes,
about
but-
you, and
but,
that's
like,
like
a
a
kilt
different. Like
is
you need to
technically
move,
male. Yeah, like kilt is technically a men's garment, but it's like
and then you also just like have to accept that you're part of that club, and we're all gonna think things about you now.
it's
Like-
like
Like you go to Ren fairs now, and that's fine.
yeah, you go to Renfales or you're like Jonathan Davis or something from Korn or whatever, right? Like,
And that's fine. Get some tattoos, and like you got enough tattoos. Pull off a kilt. We'll just be like, oh, he likes punk rock.
Yeah. I mean, I could pull off some things, but like, women's, like, even during like the emo craze, how like
You're pink enough that someone's gonna assume you're
Yeah.
Scottish.
they would, like either the emo craze and stuff when we were growing up, like the guys buying girls' jeans, like I just couldn't, like I could not fit into them.
Oh
like,
yeah, and we loved
like,
that too.
yeah. I could not wear women's jeans because I just can't fit into.
Yeah, but neither could
I
I.
know.
That's why I ripped them all the time. But,
I guess people don't know this, but I'm a very large person. I'm very large, so it's not.
Well, maybe you
I've
should
always had
qualify that a
issues,
little bit.
yeah. Well, give my measurements. No, it's like I just so finding clothes off the rack is just difficult. Period. Like
Yeah, but what we mean by a bigger person is that you're tall and you're wide. Like you're not
yes, yes.
not like supremely overweight.
No, I'm about 30 pounds overweight.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm about normal. I'm about average.
Yeah. I'm like
Is what I
30
tell my
pounds too
husband.
heavy. Yeah. I'm like, so yeah.
I mean, I could, you know, I wouldn't not look better with a little lipo,
Yeah, right.
but I'm fine.
As I age, I'm like,
You know, but only from the stubborn places, you know, like the thighs. Like that's just never gonna change. Yeah. Anyway, baby teeth.
yeah, we talked
Coming up on the end.
yeah, we talked about this at the end, and the end is basically they send her to like some like they put her in an institution basically.
Yeah, they have like an emergency meeting with their therapist, and the therapist is like, well, we might be looking at like a sociopath or a psychopath, you know.
Right.
And they're a combination of horrified and like relieved, you know, which is that makes sense, right? That's, you know, what happens with a diagnosis, right? Like you have a word for the problem.
There's that last couple scenes where they put Hannah into the institution, and Suzette and Alex are so relieved. Like there's this relief that like,
And they're like fucking on the kitchen table because that's what
Right.
happens whenever they're relieved. It's like their marriage is renewed. And that's
Yeah.
also like an interesting, I mean, maybe we should be taking it for what it is at surface level, but I think it's like an interesting point of discussion of like,
Well-
oh, when the child leaves, like there is supposed like maybe
and
this like renewal of
I think it is something real too. So she's getting at that same type of thing, like the burden of motherhood, the resentment of the child. Well, because when you have a child in a relationship or a marriage, it does change the relationship, you know, right? Like there's now a third person involved. So it's like, it does change. And I think a lot of people, I think this leads to a lot of divorce. This leads to a lot of separations and stuff because like you are forever changed now. And not just you, not just physically, your body, your hormones, whatever for a woman or stuff, but the actual relationship with, you know, the father and or your husband.
Well,
or
I think
something
that's
like,
also the thing that's really interesting here is that we keep getting these glimpses throughout the story that, like, actually the thing that, like, Suzette never really wanted a child, it seems like. And, like,
Yeah.
she was just, like, doing it because she, you know,
That's what you were supposed to do, right?
that was
Like,
the next
yeah.
thing. Like, we never really get into that. Like, we don't hear anything much about her pregnancy or about her decision to have a kid or, you know, we don't get any of that. We just get what came after and her being like, you know, I wanted her not to look like me. I wanted her to look like Alex. I wanted her to just be like the perfect vision of like Alex's, you know, little child. Like I wanted to look at this child and see
Because
my
she
husband.
views herself as less than Alex, right? So she views herself as like never living up to what Alex can do, and this is all like it's exaggerated for the story, it's exaggerated for the drama of it, but like it's all very real things. This is the great thing about books, novels, literature, art, like movies, things that we love about it, right? Because it does capture that little element, even if it's exaggerated, even if it's taken to an extreme. It captures this very real element, this very real dynamic that everybody has to deal with when they, you know, you're in a marriage and you have a child, or even if you're not in a marriage, you're just in a relationship and you have a child now, because it is this new thing. And there is, you know, it's not like, oh, I regret it. It's not like that necessarily, although there is some of that, right?
There is some
Sylvia
of that.
Plath, right? Sylvia Plath, everybody.
Well, I would say there's some of that in
but-
this book for sure.
Yeah, of course. And, but it is there. Like it's a little, it's a light. Maybe we say resentment light, like a little diet resentment, right? Like
Right.
no calories, just a little bit of it. And it's just in the back of your head, you know, and it's so human, it's so normal, it's so real
Yeah.
that it adds to the story. So you exaggerate it for the story, but it touches that part that makes us compelled to keep going, kind of thing. Because it feels real. It feels, you know. And again, you don't want to talk about this, and I get most people don't want to talk about it publicly. Sophie and I don't have kids, so we're we can talk about it like we don't actually have to deal with this. But yeah,
Because I don't know about you, but like I've had friends who've like talked about having a moment of like, why did I do this?
Yeah.
Why did I decide that I needed a child? You
Right.
know,
yeah. And it's
especially
so
if they're
normal.
creative
Yeah.
people.
Right. It's so normal. Yeah. I always think of that scene in the Sex and the City movie, the first one, where
Didn't watch it.
Never mind that. Anyway, the one girl, the attractive one, what's her name? The dark haired one. She, Charlotte, I think is her name.
Yeah, I don't know.
there's just a scene where she has kids in that because it's like the end of the series or whatever. I've watched the entire series, right? But
Yeah, I have not.
she has these two kids and they're overwhelming her, and she's home in this nice apartment, and her husband's away, and she's just so overwhelmed that she just locks herself in the pantry and cries like by herself or whatever. And like people, the reason I talk about that scene and I still remember it is just because it's so real. Like it's just such a real, like you reach that point where like you just can't physically handle anymore, and you just need like that 5 seconds alone in the locked pantry,
kids are a pain.
where your kids are like banging on the door calling for you, and you just need to like cry because you're so fucking worked up and overwhelmed about like not that it sucks, but just like what it requires. Like it takes a lot out of you. And then you can resent that.
Sucks.
Yeah, and you can resent that because it's normal to do that, right? So, but yeah.
But yeah,
so
they
it's like this book's kind of about it.
Yeah, doctor recommends that they send Hannah away, and they're like, "Well, how long?" And she's like, "Listen, this is gonna be a while." Hannah doesn't realize that she's being sent away, right? She thinks they're on this nice drive, blah, blah, blah. And then she realizes that like all of her stuff is there and that her parents are actually driving away, and that she's been left behind.
Yeah, I thought about that. Yeah. Like the ending, what do we think?
It was fun. I mean, this is the thing that prompts Hannah to speak, right? In a normal voice to both of her parents. So she has the person she refers to as Brown Teeth, which was fun.
Yeah.
Help her call her parents. She's like pleading with them and saying, "I'll be good now. I promise. It's me. It's Hannah." Blah, blah, blah. They're like, "What the fuck? You're talking now." And then they feel guilty and they feel sad. And they're like, "No, you can't come home." And the whole time, Hannah understands that she is trying to come home so that she can continue to try to kill her mother, right? That's what's behind everything. She wants to hang out with daddy and she wants to kill mommy. And it ends on this note of like, we have to be very good right now so that we can get home, so that we can kill mommy. And that's a fun place to leave it, I think.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed.
Me too.
I wanted something huge. Like I wanted her to like burn down that school or something, like just burn down that institution or something. Like,
I mean, we both wanted that was the thing. I think we both wanted. We wanted something of huge consequence to happen, and obviously, like attacking your mom with fire is a pretty big fucking deal, right? For a book like this, though, you do like expect it to kind of go there. Right? Yeah. Like what we've been saying. Like you do expect like, oh fuck, like this went to the next level of fucked up. Because it's a book and books can do that and we like it. We like to read people's dirty laundry. We only want to read it if it's a really fucked up story. We hate reading about happy people because it's boring.
Yeah. It would just make you hate the main character. If I'm just happy all the time. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it makes me hate real people.
Do you want to hit some of these book club questions in the back?
Yo, fuck yeah. Let's hear the book club questions. So my copy didn't come with book club questions.
Yeah,
so these
are mine being the paperback, the mass market kind of paperback that they put out after the hardcover, because those that know this, a lot of our listeners probably do, right? The publishing industry, you make most of the money off the hardcovers, unless you're Stephen King or somebody that sells a fuckload of copies no matter what. But, that's why they do the hardcover edition first, because usually you can charge more money for that and make more. And then they'll do the mass market paperback after that, maybe like a year to 6 months after the release of the hardcover.
But often you will later find the hardcover for cheaper used, which is fun.
Yeah, it's nice. And the hardcovers are nice and they hold up better, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so this one in my version, the paperback has, kind of like mom book club questions in the back. Because, big books do that. Like a lot of Stephen King paperbacks you read will have, book club discussions or something. And so Sophie and I were just laughing at a few of them. Because a lot of them are surface level, but a lot of them are good. The first one is Hannah misunderstood, mentally ill, or evil? Do you have any comparison or empathy, any compassion or empathy
She
for
must
her?
be one of these and not all three. No combination.
Clearly the child's just evil. I mean, least that's what's implied.
Probably mentally ill.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're that evil, there's probably kind of something wrong with you. Right? Like, there's something that she is missing. You know? Unable to connect with her mother. Like, there's something going on there. But I think
dude.
probably a little misunderstood only on account of she can't speak or chooses not to. So, yeah, at various points in the novel, she's definitely misunderstood. Yeah, some of these questions are probably they're just meant to, you know, prompt you to think a little bit about the themes of the book, and all of the themes are pretty much motherhood.
And I'm for it, dude. Like, you know, even though we laugh at some of these questions and stuff, but like, you know, we're on a different, like, you know, mom book clubs I'm all for it. They sell books, they like books, it makes people read books and talk about books. Like, I'm all for anything, any type of little group or club that's down for that. So I can't harp on it too badly. Shit, these are mostly the people that buy books anyway. So
Yeah, dude.
it's like the only audience left, but besides people like us. But yeah. Do you think Suzette bears any responsibility for Hannah's naughty behavior? Has she been an instigator of any kind? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's too difficult to question, right? Like, I mean, if you're going to answer that, like, is there a correct answer to this?
Well, I mean, not necessarily correct, but if you, I mean, it's a made up story, but like, you know, that I said that first scene where Hannah punches that little baby and then she gets rewarded anyway. So like, Suzette's kind of actions tend to be a little vengeful, and I guess they justify that by like straight up Hannah being so horribly behaved.
Yeah.
But yeah,
there were moments where I was like, God, Suzette.
And I think that makes the guiltiness.
Also,
that
like
Suzette
when they
feels.
talk about Hannah in front of her, like as though she doesn't understand, even though they seem to know that she understands words, is kind of weird to me. Like they talk about her while she's in the room in the third person. Yeah. Which is uncomfortable for anyone, including children.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, like this kind of, I mean, I see this all the time. I mean, it's basic behavior patterns and structure. I mean, if your kid's straight up that ill or that evil, it's not going to make a difference. Like, because you see them trying to do some of that with textbook, how do you reinforce good behavior and punish bad behavior? My experience with this thing is I don't have children, although I have younger nieces and nephews, where, like you have to correct the behavior. My experience is mostly like dog training. Everyone laughs at that. Like, oh, it's dog training. It's like, yeah, but it's the same thing. Like, it's like you're reinforcing the behaviors you want with reward, and then like you're punishing or, taking something away for bad behavior. Yeah. I mean, these are just basically, this is what's expected of you. This is what, and, as a kid, that takes a long time. So you take years to do that with a child. But yeah, I mean, I do this all the time, dude. I correct like my little kids around me all the time. And then sometimes I'm just like, I'll look at people. I'm like, are you going to correct your kid or do I have to? Because your kid's clearly acting out. Like, like tell them to stop. Like, be like, you will be punished if you do not stop. But yeah, whatever. People get mad at that. Oh, parenting's so hard. It's like, yeah, it is hard, dude. But like, does that mean you just can't do it? So yeah, I would say there's definitely, and not just Suzette either. I mean, I think Alex has responsibility. That's the very next question. Like it's Alex's responsibility for Hannah's behavior. And it's like, yes, of course he does. Yeah. His kind of being blissfully ignorant, not trusting his wife, his partner in this to the extent where he's like denying what she's telling him. And then that affects their relationship because now Suzette is like scared to tell him what she thinks because she thinks he won't believe her. So there's that loss of trust. There's that loss of stability in the relationship. Like there's, and it's like, oh, whose fault is it? Yeah, it's easy to say. It's all of theirs. It's both their fault. Yeah. And then there's, Hannah's fault as well for acting out in this way. Because there is an interesting thing where I think Stage does this in the book where she allows us to see that Hannah knows what good behavior is and she knows what bad behavior is, right? Like what's expected of her and then what she does. So like, Hannah isn't innocent in this either. And people are like, oh, she's a child. It's like, yeah, but like 7, 6, that's the age of reason. Like we know this. Like if your child's 7 and they're still misbehaving, like they know what they're doing. Like, yeah. they start understanding. It isn't like a 5-year-old, 4-year-old not understanding anymore. It's like, yeah, okay, you understand what's expected. You understand the rules, behavior, courtesies, manners, like all of that. You've experienced it, seen it. But yeah, I mean, we don't have to go through all this shit, but yeah, just an idea of some of these book club questions. If you get book club questions in the back of your book, I mean, shit, you probably made it as a writer, you know, like,
Yeah.
you've probably made it.
Yeah, and then, I mean, what do you think happens next with Hannah? Can she be successfully treated? I mean,
would
let's
say
play the
no.
game of if we were to see a follow-up book. If we were to see, you know...
20 years from now.
Yeah, so let's say it's less than that. Let's say we have teenage Hannah now. Let's say, like, we have between high school and college age Hannah.
Right. I would say no.
Can she be successfully treated? You'd say no. Do we
Yeah.
think she still wants to kill her mom, or has she moved on to, like, other people and other... Because now she understands how complicated, you know, relationships work, and, you know, maybe... is she still, like, out to get Suzette? Is she still out to marry her father?
Mm-hmm.
Or have we let go of this particular complex?
Yeah, I mean,
I
it's
think
hard
she
to
hangs
say,
on
but
to the resentment towards her mother. Probably has a new resentment towards her father for abandoning her, because he was the one that she loved.
And the reason I say this also, I mean, I get it. This is a fictional story, right? We're not talking about a real person, but just like my intuition on it is just when they say treatment for stuff like this, like when kids and even adults get institutionalized to it, like we really don't have good treatments for a lot of this. So that like, it kind of,
Right.
I've heard some things of like schools that specialize in severe autism and things like that. So you have kids that'll have fits right in the middle of classrooms or something. There is some reforming that out of them, but then again, they're not having like psychopathic thoughts to kill their parents. They're just having like,
Well,
they're
not
processing
missing.
and stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's not like
And what they do at a lot of those schools, from what I understand, is it's just kind of like the basic stuff, like reinforcing behavior. So if a child starts having the tantrum, there's a reward system.
We're not talking about tantrums. We're talking about issues with showing and expressing empathy.
Right. And it's just kind of like, yeah, like you're not allowed to behave this way. And, you know, eventually if you go to a special school like that and you have severe kind of autism, it does help. Like there's been studies, there's been results we can point to where it does help people learn to deal with that kind of
I think
severe
Hannah becomes a very
thing.
successfully manipulative adult.
Yeah. Like a Fortune 500 CEO or something. Like,
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, like those business people, they're fucking ruthless, man. Ruthless people. I struggle with that sometimes too. I'm always a little naive. I'm like, damn, these people are ruthless. Like these people are way more ruthless than I could ever be. Like I just couldn't be that ruthless. But a lot of people are. So there's that. Yeah, I don't know. You know, this is mom talk, dude, over some wine at a book club or whatever.
I think
time.
Yeah, I think she'd be really good at getting the adoration she wants from people.
Yeah, like if we saw her as a teenager and she starts manipulating like the boys around her and stuff like that, that could be an interesting book. Yeah. I wonder if Zoje is going to put a new one out there eventually with like a sequel. That would be fun because nobody dies in the end. You would expect like something big, but yeah.
Yeah, I thought she was gonna burn a hole right through her mother's face.
Yeah. You know, as a writer, dude, like, you know, everybody, write a sequel. It's like, yeah, dude, but like you do a project and then you're kind of done with it. Like, you're like, yeah, you're like, look, I did this project. Yeah. I spent a couple years on it. Maybe I'll come back in 10 years. You know, like Stephen King, like he like writes a couple books and then he'll come out with like a sequel. And like whenever people ask him, he's just like, you know, I just felt like revisiting that character. Like I was just kind of sitting around, you know, what should I write next? But, I'll go write a sequel. I was like, what they're doing now? What are they doing now 20 years later? Like, what are they doing? You know? And you could do that, but we said on our Stephen King episode, like, it usually doesn't end well if you're going to write a sequel like 10, 20, 30 years later. It's what was Harper Lee's, right? Wrote one fucking book and then wrote a sequel to that like 60 years later, and it was terrible, and, and then died. Like, so it was just like, okay. But yeah. Overall, you know, I enjoyed it. We're going to link it in the description as always. You buy yourself a copy, give it a read.
Really recommend.
Add it to your library. Yeah. And she has a lot of books out. I haven't read other ones, but like Sophie said, she bought her second book. I think she's got 3 or 4 out now because this was 2018.
Yeah, hopefully you actually read this one and we didn't just like ruin it for you. It's a pretty fun one.
No spoilers on this podcast. This podcast doesn't give a fuck about spoilers, dude. Like,
y'all can suck it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go read Wonderland, and she has another book that came out after Wonderland. It came out more recently. I don't remember what it was called, but
it was like
probably find that one too.
Motherhood or something.
No, I think it was something very like it was. Let me look it up real quick.
But anyway, yeah, if you're interested, I think she does, based on this novel at least, yeah, there's a lot of, you know, she has the chops, she has the storytelling ability, and clearly is better than most of the pop stuff where you're going to have a lot of kind of eye-rolling moments if you're somebody like us that reads a lot of literary stuff on top of, you know, the pop stuff, but... Yeah, I think it's good. I'm glad that she's seeing some success with this.
There's another one that's coming out called Mothered. Yeah, and that's coming out next year.
Yeah, and I think I saw that online when I was looking up. So yeah, she's put one out basically every year.
Yeah, she has pretty much.
I mean, people that listen to this podcast, I assume most of our audience members are people that are trying to be writers or, you know, really like this stuff. But yeah, if you're a writer, a contemporary writer, and you're not a teacher, like you don't have some other job, yeah, you need to be putting out a book a year or you will not make a living, right? Even if that book doesn't sell, you just need the advance money that you're going to get from like a publisher, like a big publisher that's going to want to sell these copies. So yeah, you basically, if you don't put out a book a year as a writer, well, the days of maybe being a writer and living off that, like just not possible anymore. Unless, you know, you hit it big like a Stephen King or a J.K. Rowling or something. And even they are still putting out books every year. J.K. Rowling never stopped, you know. She's putting out like those, you know, the 6th version of those like detective novels she writes now. Like, so, you know. That's just how it works now. Is that you got to be able to get your chops up to a point. If you don't have another job to write for a living, you just have to be putting out a novel a year. Or
I have a feeling I'm gonna read all of these, man.
Yeah, I mean, you should. Like, I mean, we're obsessives here. I like being a completist. I like reading everybody's work, like an entire author's.
Also, it's work. Like, once you find an author that you really like, and you're like, oh yeah, I flew through that book. You're gonna want to read the rest of them. Right.
And as always, buy the book. Buy the book, support it, because this is, if you like books, well, this is the only way it works, man. Be like, oh, I like books, I just don't like to buy them. It's like, oh, okay, well, then the industry's going to disappear, or they're only going to publish books that you don't like. You know, they're going to publish the books that you're not buying, so. Which we run into a little bit here, is like the market is kind of, I don't know. I mean, I guess I can get all into that, like... Maybe I'm just bitter as I'm in that moment where I'm searching for agents and shit like that. But it's just like all these people that claim to understand the market, like that claim that they know what sells, like all these agents, all these editors. I'm just like, yeah, if you know so well, then why isn't every book a bestseller? Like if you know this market so goddamn well, then why you have so many fucking flops on your, like, you know, like I just like either you guys have terrible taste or you don't know what you're talking about. Like I just don't understand, like, whatever. Like I said, if I talk about it, it just comes off bitter, kind of sour grapes. So I don't want to go into it too much. But I guess we're done here. We hit everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Reminder to listeners, we're still looking for those workshop horror stories. Send those into heavyboardpodcast@gmail.com. We also have that subscription plan available. Subscribe at patreon.com/heavyboard to receive full, uncensored episodes, bonus episodes, extras, interviews, all that good stuff. Only for subscribers. And then support us. Leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. That helps us out. Like, share, subscribe. Subscribe to our YouTube channels. Like, share. All that good stuff. And That helps us grow. And this has been Heavy Board.
And I'm freshly fucked and the sun is shining.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy, heavy, heavy.
Bored.
I may say that the male is entirely hostile. No! Inner
Resources.
life, friends, is boring. We must not say so. Are you radioactive now?
Inner.
Resources, American resources.
Being bored,
Some activities are intentional, right?
it shows such a lack
Heavy.
of gratitude for life. Bored. I aspire to boredom,
Heavy.
I should say.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy, heavy, heavy.
Bored.
Has you the night sweats and the day sweats, pal? Pal, I do.